Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada Board of Directors meeting. Ms. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Your agenda is in order and ready for your approval.
A motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you. Your second item is to receive the general manager report. Before we move into that report, I'd like to report that this morning at approximately 6:30 a.m., we were made aware of a crash wherein a car traveling more than 100 miles an hour left the roadway, struck a facility, and ultimately impacted a bus shelter at Decatur and Spring Mountain. Staff is in close communication with Metro to obtain more information about the incident, but we would like to take a moment of silence to pay respect to the lives lost and the injuries obtained due to this tragic accident. And we will keep you informed as any new information is received, but at this moment.
There was an accident this morning at Spring Mountain east of Decatur where there were some fatalities involved. So the general manager has asked if you would join us in a moment of silence for those that had lost their lives and those that are injured. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, for General Manager's report, we'd like to introduce to you a new quarterly program wherein we are going to be recognizing some of the fabulous drivers that we have with our contractors, our Drivers Recognition Program. It'll give the board the opportunity to recognize these transit operators who are passionate about their job, who go above and beyond with great customer service. As many of us know, driving our own personal vehicles in Southern Nevada can be challenging and dangerous, as we well know by the incident this morning. For years, these drivers have navigated the roads consistently to deliver their passengers to their destination in a safe and timely manner. So first, I would like to recognize two drivers from Veolia, Victoria Townsend and Alvin Peavy. Victoria has been with Veolia for 7 years, but she's been driving for 40 years. Her dedication to safety while ensuring her passengers are informed of service changes and greeted with a friendly smile and hello has earned her a great reputation of excellence among many of our riding public. She credits her success to staying 100% focused on the road while also remaining dedicated to her passengers. While at home, she dedicates 100% of her focus to her family, and she provides the same advice as when driving a deuce on the strip, and that is, do the best you know how to do when you are out there. Alan Peavy. Our next fixed route operator that we want to recognize is Alvin Peavy. Alvin's been with Veolia Transportation for over a decade. Alvin's impeccable safety, his on-time departure history, and of course his excellent customer service record have ensured Alvin's place as one of Las Vegas's ambassadors to the city. Alvin credits his success to patience with the traffic, the visiting tourists, and distracted drivers while driving the strip. Alvin places a huge value in his ability to communicate and build relationships with visitors from all over the world. He is thankful he's had the opportunity to showcase this amazing city to guests from all around the world. So I don't believe Victoria is here, but Alvin, if you could come down and please be recognized by the board and receive a special gift.
He's here.
There you go. Well, I feel right at home. I got a microphone in front of me. All I need is Al's double-decker with cheese. Oftentimes, I say, welcome, welcome, welcome aboard Al's double-decker with cheese. I'm here to satisfy that is no lie. For I truly do find pleasure in doing what I do, keeping in mind that you are everything to me. My passengers, you truly are. Everything, each and everything to me. I tell them on a daily basis, I love you, I love you, I lovely, I do. All the way to the bank on payday. Ladies and gentlemen, guess what today is? Payday! Payday!
The next set of operators that we want to recognize are from First Transit. First Transit operators drive our RTC ADA paratransit customers around the valley. Some of these customers require an abundance of care and patience when performing their scheduled trips. It takes a special person to operate these vehicles, and we want to recognize two outstanding operators from First Transit, Ernie Reichley and Carol Winslow. Ernie is a veteran coach operator who's been providing professional paratransit service since 1999 and has maintained a safe driving record. He has received numerous customer compliments and commendations and is well known for genuine care and pleasant personality. Customers have often expressed their appreciation for his helpful and friendly manner. Carol has been a paratransit operator since 2006 and has also maintained a safe driving record. She's made an impression on our customers as they have called in to let us know how well they were treated on her coach. She has also been a cadet trainer for new employees for the past year and has exhibited great care and patience when working with these new employees to ensure they are safe and show the same level of customer service. So Ernie and Carol, can we ask you, oh, you're up there, to also be recognized.
I just want to say I thank RTC for this award, and I take my job very seriously. And in order to do this job, you have to first love people, and you have to enjoy it. So, and I'm just grateful just to receive this award. Thank you.
This was an honor, thank you, and meeting Jerry Tarkanian's wife was an honor. Thank you much. Go Rebels.
Okay.
Good to see you. I will. Go Democrats.
I worked it well, didn't I?
Please do, please do.
Next slide. Thanks to extensive input from our customers and improved sales tax revenue and an upcoming fare increase on the resort corridor, we are going to be able to enhance several of our routes beginning September 30th. Specifically, Route 206 Charleston will stretch a little farther to Fort Apache rather than stopping at Rainbow. Route 210 East will take passengers to Lake Mead and Hollywood, where it used to end at Nellis. We've also restructured the Sahara Express to run every 20 minutes in the busiest sections of the corridor. And we'll be increasing frequencies along other routes as well, including the 202, which is Flamingo, Route 206, which is Charleston, 208 on Washington, and 106, which is Rancho. And in addition to this, to these service changes, we also have the fare adjustments that go along the resort corridor. We'll be increasing the Strip and all access 24-hour pass from $7 to $8, and the Strip and all access 2-hour pass will go from $5 to $6. Next slide. 1 month ago today, on August 13th, we introduced the new Downtown and Veterans Medical Center Express, and we are thrilled to announce that ridership has exceeded expectations. We're carrying about an average of 350 passengers a day, and we know by the comments that we are getting from our customers that this is a service that is greatly appreciated. So, and we also wanted to, so excited about that, we also wanted to express our appreciation to the Cannery Casino and Hotel, which is allowing us to have our first park and ride lot in North Las Vegas, and we do see people using that, so happy to report on that. The Bonneville Transit Center was recently awarded a LEED Platinum certification. That's the highest that you can get. It's only the 3rd building in Southern Nevada and the 5th in the state to receive this status. Very proud of it, this recognition. A lot of credit goes out to David Swallow on our staff, who coordinated and worked very hard to secure that certification. The features at our downtown transit center reduce the energy consumption by 58%, a lot of it due to the photovoltaic energy panels and the fact that 80% of the building is lit by natural light during the day. I have a really quick customer service, somebody I want to recognize. This is no formal award or anything, but recently I've been out riding the system, and I was out at BTC when we did the LEED certification ceremony. And inevitably, when I am out, I am often approached by people when they see that I'm with the RTC who will say to me, "Do you know Kenny Rodriguez?" Well, do you work for Kenny Rodriguez? Because he is really a neat guy, which absolutely astounds me, because the only reason you would know Kenny Rodriguez as a customer is if a complaint escalated to the point that you needed to talk to the manager of that group. So it always takes me back the fact that whoever he's dealing with, these are angry people by the time they get to him. But they leave not only remembering his name, but telling me and whoever they can talk to, "Do you know him? He is a great guy." For those of you who don't know, Kenny's been in the transit industry pretty much his whole life. He's a nephew of Charlie Frias, and he was raised by taxi cab drivers, he says. And so he kind of credits that upbringing to the fact that he can, one, deal with absolutely anybody, and he can de-escalate any situation very quickly. And so we're very honored and thankful to have him here, and I just wanted to give a shout out to him. So I don't even know if he's in the audience.
And Kenny's direct cell line is?
We have one more recognition. On Tuesday, when we were having all those floods, there were 3 of our FAST employees who were at the intersection of Sahara and Atlantic when all the water was letting out. We had a lot of flooding, but at the same time, children were just getting out of school and trying to cross the intersection. And Jama Himes on our staff saw a girl stumble and fall into the rapidly moving water. She was struggling on her back, being swept up with the running water. He jumped out of his truck, ran across the island, and was able to pull her out safely to the center island, at which point an NHP trooper had arrived, and he was able to turn the case over to them. But I wanted to recognize Jama, if he's in here as well, just for his quick reaction. Thank you. With that, That concludes our general manager report. And next we have next agenda item is item number 3, to receive the Nevada Department of Transportation Director's Report.
ability to work collaboratively with folks, and I enjoy that he's not defensive about NDOT. NDOT can always do things better, and Bill has that same mentality as I do, that we're here to help the local public agencies, the RTCs across the state, as well as the public. For Deputy Director for Southern Nevada, my old position down here, Tracy Larkin Thomason, who was a head of our Assistant Director for Planning, and she expressed interest in moving to Las Vegas, and which is rare for people from Northern Nevada. So I took her up on that challenge, and she's going to be working directly as the representative down here, as also she oversees the 3 district engineers across our 3 districts in Elko, Reno, and Las Vegas. Assistant Director for Engineering was a critical position. We have some challenges, and I decided to take someone from down here who's worked closely with me through the years in development of the HOV plan for Las Vegas and other engineering challenges on some of our projects. John Terry, who's actually here today, I believe. John, could you stand? He'll be the Assistant Director for Engineering and Chief Engineer for NDOT, and I'm really pleased that bringing someone that understands Las Vegas and Southern Nevada transportation challenges up to Carson City to help me out up there. And it's also my pleasure to announce Assistant Director for Planning. Since Tracy's moving down here to my old position, I'm stealing someone from the RTC in Washoe County. Former NDOT employee, but he's been working at RTC in Washoe as a planner for the last 6 years, Tom Greco. He's got some great experience as a project manager at NDOT and good experience at the RTC, and hopefully Lee Gibson will forgive me for stealing him from them. But I think that it's going to be good for kind of mixing things up and getting somebody from with an outside perspective, even though he's worked within NDOT. I get the best of both worlds with Tom Greco. So those changes will occur. Tom will start on October 1st. The other people are internal at NDOT, so they'll take those positions immediately. Wanted to also mention that we will be working closely with RTC, as we have been earlier this week. We had a meeting about agreements and the local public agency projects and how to do those more efficiently and effectively. So we'll continue to work on that, but we also want to look at the business process itself of the agreements and why it takes so long, and where we can condense those timeframes and get more efficient on agreements. So I wanted to announce that also, that we will be working on some type of electronic STIP document. Right now it's all on paper, and I'm tasking my folks in planning to get into the electronic age here and do things automatically. Same with the permitting process for overdimensional trucks and cranes that have to move on our network of highways and streets. We want to have an electronic process for permitting those oversized loads. So those are just a few things to report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Your next item is to conduct a comment period for citizens' participation.
This is the time set aside for anyone wishing to speak on a specific agenda item. There's a second public comment period after the meeting. Now, I would first, having said that, I'm going to, Mr. Mendoza, if you could step aside, I'm going to invite Dr. Gaines down. He is visiting from out of town and does have some commitments. So out of courtesy to his schedule, Stan will introduce him, and Stan's promised to keep his remarks short and let the doctor speak.
The deal was 90 seconds, so I'm going to take 30, and he's going to take 60, okay? You can count it. It's always a pleasure to come before the commission. Haven't been here in a while, but I do have a very fine introduction to make. As you know, during those tenuous negotiations or battles between the RFP that took place 2 years ago, there was talk about the DBE and bringing in outside DBEs that should not be able to come in on their own. And we had a particular DBE with First Transit who that was the case, and that was RIM Services, very substantial young lady from Houston. Well, she heeded. She's back participating in the process this time, but she has partnered with a local veteran-owned business, and that's Dr. Gaines here. And I'm going to go ahead and let him take it from there. I do basically want to go ahead and say that he's made his rounds around the community. The support that he has moving forth thus far is the NAACP, Ward 5 Chamber of Commerce, Veterans in Politics, Steve Sampson just left, Churches of Southern Nevada, Black Business Council, Leonard Hamilton's in the audience, and our very own Sarah Knight Preddy, who's with us as well. So, and that support will be gaining as I go ahead and take it further and further. But given that said, I want to go ahead and be brief so he can go ahead and fill you in, and we'll be getting with you individually anyway.
Thank you. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. I thank you for allowing me to come and speak before you. I'd like to let you know that I'm in excess of 20 years retired military veteran. Spent my life in defense of this country and this great nation, 5 years of which was spent in Vietnam. And I managed to survive that, along with some other very good friends. We think it's time for us as veterans to step up and take responsibility for ourselves and our community involvement. And instead of complaining to the government, we want to create that environment in which we can create jobs and we can create the environment to get our homeless veterans off the street and put them back to work. Our brothers and sisters need our help, and that's why I've decided to form Veterans Southwest Maintenance. Our real goal is to create an environment where we can educate, train, and get those people back on their feet. And to give you a little bit about my background, not just that my military retired, I'm also a private businessman. I had a couple of service stations that I built into a mobile business concern in Victorville. And we did everything. It was a one-stop automotive center where you could get anything done, paint and body shop, automotive repair, engine rebuilds, everything. Besides that, I also supervised the Avionics Research and Development Laboratory for the B-1 bomber program. I retired from Boeing, and I'm also a retired union worker, 751, Aerospace and Machinist Union. Still happily affiliated with that organization and participate on a monthly basis. So we need to come back to the table. And I thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you.
Thank you, Dr. Gaines. Thank you.
We will be meeting with the proposers. Thank you.
Mr. Mendoza.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the commissioners. As earlier discussed, excuse me, we have been requesting to be placed on the public agenda item, and I guess you have an answer for us regarding the public agenda item.
This is what I need you to do, because we've shared correspondence for a couple months, and in talking with council, if you would address a letter to myself and the board members and copy Ms. Quigley, saying that you're requesting an agenda item and list specifically what you would like us to place on. It may not come out exactly as you put it. We'll have to format it. And the only cautionary note I would give is whatever you're asking for has to be within the jurisdiction and purview of this board. As an example, if it's addressing contract negotiations between your union and our contractor, we cannot get involved in that. So and we will work with you on the language, but you need to formally address that letter to the board, and then we'll hopefully get it on for next month.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, and I'll save my comments in the second part. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to a specific agenda item? Mr. Mendoza spoke to the whole agenda, so we gave him a little discretion there. Seeing no one, will close this public comment period and remind people at the end of the meeting there'll be a second comment period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is your consent agenda, which is made up of items 5 through 41 and may be taken in one motion.
Is a motion on the floor for approval of the consent? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Item number 42 is to receive and approve the Regional Rapid Transit Authority Advisory Committee's final report to the Nevada Legislature and direct staff accordingly. And with us today, we have Mr. Phil Hoffman from PB Transportation to present the item.
Thank you, Tina, and good morning. As you know, Senate Bill 151 was passed by the 2011 legislative session, and that bill required the RTC to establish an advisory committee that would analyze the development of a potential regional rapid transit system and report back to the legislature. So last fall, the RTC organized this committee and included all of the representatives that you see on this slide, led by the general manager, of course. This committee met a total of 5 times over a 9-month period, starting back in November of 2011, and with their final meeting being in July of this year. Over that 9-month period, the committee addressed quite a few different items, starting with the need for a regional rapid transit system, the existing plan compared with the system as it exists today, various opportunities, costs, and constraints of further developing that plan, and then obtained input both from the general public as well as the resort properties before developing the recommendations. Now, as you know, this is not the first time that this issue has been studied by the RTC. In fact, over the last 10 years, quite a few plans and studies have been developed to address this issue of rapid transit system throughout the valley. The first rapid transit system plan was developed back in 2002. That plan identified multiple high travel demand corridors that could benefit from the provision of rapid transit service. Now, in the last 10 years, the RTC has made tremendous progress in implementing that plan. As you can see by this slide, there are now 7 express bus route corridors in place that the RTD has developed, again, referring back to that original plan from 2002, as well as additional improvements to transit service in the resort corridor, namely the Deuce service and the SDX, the Strip to Downtown Express BRT service. The most recent express service corridor to be developed is the Sahara Express, which was opened in May of this year. The next 2 corridors to be developed are Flamingo, which is simply pending available funding to develop the final design and construction for the corridor, and Maryland Parkway, for which an alternatives analysis will begin this fall. The first rapid transit corridor that was studied was initiated back in 2004 to 2008. It was called the Regional Fixed Guideway Corridor, and it linked the city of North Las Vegas with the city of Las Vegas and the resort corridor to the city of Henderson. Over the course of that study, the RTC examined a whole variety of technologies, potential alignments, center and side running exclusive lanes, and ultimately focused on the resort corridor where, of course, you have the largest employment base and the greatest need for rapid transit. During the course of that study, as I mentioned, the RTC examined several different technologies, including light rail and bus rapid transit, again, both side or center running. Ultimately, the RTC selected bus rapid transit as a center running option to be the most cost effective. This next slide shows you a computer simulation of what the BRT in dedicated center lanes would look like and how it would operate along the Strip. Now, at the time, of course, we were facing a significant economic recession, et cetera, and the resort properties felt at that time that they simply could not support the development of dedicated BRT lanes along the Strip. So instead, the RTC responded by improving the services, including the Deuce service, which was introduced, as well as the Strip to Downtown Express service. This photo illustrates what the center station platform looks like for the existing SDX system down in the downtown area, along with the dedicated lanes. Now, in their discussions, the advisory committee agreed that it really would make sense to further consider additional improvements in transit service along the Strip. And so they asked the RTC to conduct some public surveys in the resort corridor and get feedback about how people traveled and their use of transit and how all of that might affect their visit. So the firm of Applied Analysis, which is a local economic analysis firm, developed a survey and conducted that survey for 800 visitors in the resort corridor, both downtown and along the Strip, back in April of this year. There is a summary of all of their results, survey results, that's available. But the ultimate results fundamentally are consolidated in these three bullets as you see here on the slide. First of all, those surveyed indicated that congestion on the Strip simply has not diminished the quality of their visits, their trips to Las Vegas, nor will it prevent them from returning to Las Vegas. Further, 70% of those surveyed find it easy or very easy to travel along the Strip, and 82% rate the current bus service in the resort corridor either as good or very good. As a next step, the committee decided to reapproach the resort properties and again, try to get their feedback about further expanding transit service on the Strip. So back in May and June of this year, Tina and Virginia Valentine, president of the Nevada Resort Association, visited with all of the key resort properties and had this discussion with them, shared the results of the public survey, et cetera. As it turns out, they received, though, the same response fundamentally from the resort owners as back in 2008. That is that there's simply no interest in developing dedicated lanes along the Strip at this time. So after reviewing all of the previous studies, the survey results, and feedback from the resort owners, the committee concluded that since the visitors and resort properties are happy with the resort transit service as it is today, and the fact that the RTC will continue its long-range transit planning, system planning, obviously, and will focus on the remaining express corridors, that fundamentally it was time to conclude the activities of the RTA and report to the legislature. So the committee prepared the final report summarizing their findings, and that, of course, was included in your packet. And that report includes these 6 recommendations. Now, of course, you understand that all of these recommendations will be ongoing efforts by the RTC and their staff. The first recommendation is to identify improved employee transit service options to further reduce congestion in the resort corridor, including things such as better connections with the monorail, additional east-west routes to connect with the major employers in the resort corridor, and to examine opportunities for additional funding for all of these improvements. The second recommendation is to protect and improve RTC's bus operations and public safety, and this includes examining opportunities for additional dedicated lanes in other corridors, and even considering allowing emergency responders to use those lanes to, again, improve their response time. The third recommendation is to consider alternate traffic movements in the resort corridor to accommodate additional traffic, including things such as developing reversible one-way travel lanes in peak periods to, again, improve the flow of people and vehicles through the corridor. The fourth committee recommendation is to improve service to special events venues, to simply offer more opportunities for people to use transit service to attend special events. The fifth recommendation is to provide additional park and ride options throughout the valley to encourage more commuters to use transit. And the last recommendation is to continue to work with employers to incentivize employees to use transit as well. And with that, that is the summary of the work of this authority, or excuse me, of this committee. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the board? Commissioner June Kiliani?
Thank you. It was good to work with you and with the committee. I still stand that regardless of the Strip corridor's opposition to changing the light rail on there, it still should be the best way to go on that corridor, but be that as it may. I am glad that we will at least be looking at alternatives, possibly Maryland Parkway, Eastern, those types of areas where we look at connectivity in a different way for those folks. In the incentivization for employees, was the number still around 30% that are commuting on the Strip that are employees going to work, something along those
Yes.
lines. And there are, Curtis can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think y'all convinced me that maybe the only way the monorail could and should work would be to move back of the house, not expand, but move back of the house and take a look at some things. But that would, I think we would need to make sure that their product can be converted into something less third world. And that might be some of the discussion, hopefully, I think when Curtis does his report today, that we'll chat about. But there are also places where through collective bargaining agreements, employers and employees have done additional time if they do park and ride, or additional time if they ride public transit. And so maybe we could do an analysis of some of those types. I think Oregon have done it and some other places where we could maybe at least have some ideas to present to employers about how to incentivize. And if you've got other ideas, that might be something welcome for us to take up at some point. I do have to say that on the Strip, we still need to, it probably isn't the purview of that committee, but for our first responders, we do need some way to dedicate some lanes, at least on Friday and Saturday nights, maybe taking some lane out of passenger vehicles and allow only for emergency vehicles, so that we're making sure that they can access, at least our Metropolitan Police Department and Fire Department have alluded to that on several occasions. So hopefully we can still take a look at different ways to accommodate, or like the one-way run that you mentioned as well. I know that Senator Schneider really wanted this to go in a different direction, but at least I think we covered everything that they intended legislatively. So thank you.
Thank you. So my understanding is we've received the final report. You're asking for approval of that, and who sends it? Does the RTC or does the committee send that to the legislature?
The RTC will take it to the legislature.
Okay. All right, entertain a motion. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Our next item is to receive presentations on Southern Nevada's transportation infrastructure, give you an update. We're excited to have a really great group of presenters today. We'll have representatives from NDOT to talk to us about the I-11 plans, the I-15 corridor. We have Curtis Miles from the monorail. We've got Andrew Mack from Express West, formerly of Desert Express. And we'll have Tom Skanke from the Western High-Speed Rail Alliance. Give us kind of a regional overview as to what's going on in terms of transportation infrastructure investment and expansion. So with that, I think our first speaker is going to be Sandra Rosenberg with NDOT to talk to us about I-11 and I-15.
Good morning, members of the Commission. My name is Sandra Rosenberg. I'm the Federal Programs Manager with the Nevada Department of Transportation. And I want to thank you for giving me time today to give you an update on some of our regional planning efforts in cooperation with the RTC. I will start with the I-11 and Intermountain West corridor study that we're working on. I know you're all familiar with the concept of I-11 and the recent designation of I-11 in MAP 21. So I wanted to give you an update on what we're working on to move that effort forward. IST and subsequent authorizations designate corridors of high priority. CanMX was designated in 1995 as a high priority corridor, which included US 93 and I-15 from Mexico to Las Vegas, up through Utah and up to Canada. The portion of this on US 93 between Phoenix and Las Vegas was most recently designated as I-11 in MAP 21. So that's all very exciting because we all recognize the importance of connecting these two metropolitan areas. Arizona and Nevada DOTs have signed an interagency agreement, and we're working on a planning effort for that portion of the corridor, as well as, sorry, I'm a little late on my animations there. So that's the designated portion there that I just highlighted. We're working with Arizona DOT, looking at that portion, as well as what it might connect to north and south of those metropolitan areas.
Sandra, if I may interrupt, on that visual, where is the official designation I-11 end? Is it at the Spaghetti Bowl, or?
The language in the legislation is actually vague on the exact endpoints, both in Phoenix and Las Vegas. it just simply says to Las Vegas. And that's part of what we'll look at in this study is, does it make sense for I-11 to go through the Spaghetti Bowl, or does it make sense to look at some potential alternative alignments around the central part of Las Vegas? And that's all undetermined and will be part of this study.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, we're doing 2 levels of investigation. We're looking at the high priority portion, which is that portion designated, as well as routes in, through, or potentially around the metropolitan areas of Phoenix and Las Vegas. As well as a very, very high level, what's the overall need for connections north and south, Mexico to Canada? As you know, the distance between I-5 and I-15 is quite large, especially as you go further north. And compared to the infrastructure on the East Coast, you know, we might be missing some opportunity for an additional north-south corridor in the west. So we're looking at what that need is, what some potential alternatives might be if we do determine there is a need there. This is a multimodal consideration, although the designation is for interstate. We're looking at what are all the modal demands for north-south connectivity between Mexico and Canada through Nevada. And we're also looking at how we can maybe combine with other infrastructure improvements such as water, energy, power, as it makes sense. There's certainly plans for additional utility corridors, power corridors, so we want to coordinate efforts and make sure we're all in alignment, and where it makes sense, maybe we can have a corridor that addresses both transportation and other infrastructure needs. We're using this study as a pilot for our new planning and environment linkages tool. Both Arizona and Nevada have recently developed a questionnaire and checklist to better coordinate between the planning efforts through the environmental process so that projects can be delivered faster ultimately. We have some potential benefits of the corridor. I think you're all probably aware that, you know, just connecting communities, enhancing economic vitality, improving safety, travel time, a potential relief route. You know, the state of California is very interested in what we're doing on this because they see their major corridors of I-5 and US 99 being very congested without a whole lot of opportunities for additional reliever routes for them. So in terms of moving goods from the ports in California up through to connect to the rest of the country, they certainly want to partner with us on what potential relief this corridor could provide. And certainly not least, serving the region's businesses. So here's a list of studies that we're incorporating. We certainly don't want to redo any work that's already been done. We want to incorporate information, recommendations from previous studies. This list is probably not quite complete, but it gives you some idea of the resources we're using as part of this. This is how we currently have set up our decision-making process. So the sponsoring agencies at the very top, Nevada DOT, Arizona DOT, and then we have, we're working very closely what we're calling our core agency partners, and that is RTC of Southern Nevada, Maricopa Association of Governments, Federal Highways Administration, division offices in both states, and the Federal Railroad Administration. And then we have the Stakeholder Partners Group, and that is sort of all the other agencies and entities that have an interest, have a stake in this corridor. And we have a meeting coming up on that later this month, which I'll mention in the next slide. And then we plan on establishing focus groups for the different topics so that we don't bog everyone down with every detail of this. We want certain interests, certain topics, modes to work together on those details, and then we bring it all together through those other groups. And of course, we have consultant support. This is, I'm sure, very difficult to see, but I believe you received a handout, and this is our detailed work plan. You know, full transparency here. Here's where we're going for. Here's all the details we plan on including in this study. Certainly, if you have any questions or concerns, you can contact us at any time. Meeting dates. So the project sponsors, NDOT, ADOT, we meet at a minimum monthly. We've been having calls weekly, if not daily, on some of the initial startup activities. So we're working very closely. We're also working very closely with our core agency partners, including RTC staff. We have a meeting scheduled. We recently had a core agency meeting. We do have a stakeholder partners meeting scheduled for September 26th. I know that date isn't on there. We just finalized that date. And there will be a meeting opportunity at the RTC at the RTC up in Reno, as well as locations in Arizona. And it'll also be available via web and conference call. And then we have scheduled public meetings in October, both in Henderson and in Phoenix. We also will take any opportunity available to piggyback on other public meetings to present to boards and commissions as requested and as appropriate. And if you have any questions, there's my contact information as well as my counterpart in Arizona.
Comments or questions? Mayor Tobler.
I can't see very well on the map, but the designated I-11 does follow the bypass route around Boulder City, or does it go through the current 93?
My understanding is that it would follow the bypass. The designation says US 93. My understanding is that once the bypass is complete, that will be US 93 and therefore I-11.
Okay.
I'm looking at the Federal Highways folks, and they're nodding yes, so.
Other comments or questions? And the money, this is, I-11 is fully funded?
The study is fully funded. That will be part of the study, is once we determine what we're recommending and what the need is for the corridor, we'll look at some very high-level planning estimates on what the cost will be, and some, sort of anything's on the table as far as financing and funding opportunities to actually build once we determine what the recommendations are.
When Secretary LaHood was in town and spoke, I think, to the chamber breakfast, I made an interesting point, and he referenced the I-11 project. He encouraged all the stakeholder groups not to look for the one-time shot and build it. He really talked about incremental success and breaking it into doable projects as quickly as possible as funding becomes available. And I think that was a statement, certainly, that got our attention. And I don't want to put him on the spot, but Mr. Skanke actually put a time frame when this would be up and running. I won't put that on the public record, but it was very encouraging, and we certainly thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Yep. I have one more presentation for you. I-15 Corridor System Master Plan is an effort that we've been working on for about 2 years now, and it's been very exciting, very successful, lots of momentum. This is, I know that's a very difficult display to see. It's actually a page taken from our master plan, and if anyone would like a hard copy of that, I'd be happy to provide one to you. It's also available on our website. But this figure just shows the scope and length of the corridor that we looked at. So all the way from San Diego up through Salt Lake to northern Utah. And this, this partnership between the 4 states of Nevada, California, Arizona, and Utah began, long before my time at NDOT, and was formally recognized as part of the Corridors of the Future program. I-15 was recognized as one of 6 Corridors of the Future in 2007, and that was a pretty high honor. We're listed, ranked up there with corridors such as the 95 Coalition, which has been ongoing for quite some time. So we partnershiped on the Corridors of the Future effort, received some money for that. That was spent on projects. And then that program, that name, Corridors of the Future, kind of dissolved, as some federal programs do. But Susan Martinovich decided that this is too important to let go. This partnership, this corridor is so vital to the state of Nevada that we need to keep this going. So we developed a partnership. We developed a vision and a plan. We, the vision is defined by this partnership, and it's sustained by the alliance that we created in it. And, this is where our initial goals and vision, that we would define a multi-decade, multimodal transportation system, provide prioritized program of projects, and then create a governance structure. And that's highlighted in red because we're still working on that. We haven't quite we're not going to give up, but we're working on the details of how different states work together, particularly when you're talking about the states sharing costs in some of these efforts. Obviously, you won't be able to read the mission statement, but again, it's on our website, it's on our document. And this is, that's the front page of our document. It shows the different chapters, we looked at different efforts. And the Mobility Alliance was set up very similar to what I mentioned for I-11. So we have, the top sort of governing body is the DOT directors from the 4 states involved, and they make ultimate decisions. But then we have a steering committee, which really pulls in all the mode and topic-specific information, makes recommendations, and we forward that through. And in the 2 years that we've been working on it, there have been very little controversy. We all work through what the process is. We work through how we're going to make recommendations, what we're going to look at, what are the priorities. And once everyone agrees on that, the individual recommendations seem to go fairly smoothly, at least so far. This is, again, you won't be able to read the details, but this is the list of all the members of the Alliance. There's 72 member entities. Now, this is the exciting part. So we have the accomplishments that we've had over the past couple of years. We created the Alliance with the 72 member entities, collaborating like never before, identified 27 projects of immediate need and interregional significance, endorsed unanimously, and that was a pretty exciting day that we could all agree on what our top priorities are. We created there's the partners. This, again, you can't read, but hopefully you can in your handout. This was the list of the 27 projects, and they're categorized by type of project. So it's not like these 27 are all competing against each other. They're separated out, so there's only a handful in each topic. You don't have that? Okay. I can get you that. It's all on our website. We had little trifold pamphlets made out with those lists that went to Washington to help support these. But the point is that there's 27 that we all agreed on. We worked with Utah Department of Transportation and their U-Plan platform to GIS map not only the projects, but some of the information about the roadways, about the things that some of these decisions are based on, safety information, roadway characteristics, all in a searchable GIS platform. And they have recently upgraded their U-Plan platform, and we are going to be working very closely with them on their on a pilot to expand that whole platform to the western U.S., which is very valuable for efforts such as this. We created 16 technical memorandums based on subject, and they vary from roadway characteristics to bicycling to freight movement. So we tackled all the topics in those technical memorandums so that the final document was sort of a summary of all that and kind of easy to read and easy to see the overall impacts. But if you're interested in all the technical information, again, those are available on our website. We were recognized in Engineering News Record, which is a pretty big deal for engineering types, as recognizing this collaborative effort for transportation. We all agreed, as I mentioned, on the process for prioritizing projects, and we were able to develop a 10-year prioritized list of projects along the entire corridor based on corridor need and the vision for the corridor. And that's our process. Again, if you'd like to look at it in more detail on our website. We supported 4 Tiger grants, 4 in round 3 of Tiger. 1 was selected. We supported the other 3 in the following round. 1 was selected. Since then, we've had some other discretionary funds awarded to this effort, which is quite exciting, including in the last round of Tiger, the one that was selected was the Virgin River Gorge Bridge number 6 in Arizona, which I know is, even though it's in Arizona, it's quite important to Las Vegas, so we were very excited to help support that. And it was the largest recipient of Tiger grant for that round, $21.6 million. And we developed the master plan, and we also we came together for another discretionary grant opportunity. The Alliance had all agreed that the first next step for Alliance-wide activity would be a corridor-wide ITS and operations effort. And it just so happened that after we agreed on that, an opportunity came up through USDOT for the Multi-State Corridor Operations and Management Program, We put in an application for that, and we were selected. Again, we were one of 6 corridors and included some of those other corridors that were selected for corridors of the future. So we're up, again, we're ranked up there with the 95 Coalition, which has been in existence for about 20 years, and here we are 2 years new, and we're getting to be at the same level with them. So that was awarded $1.25 million to the Alliance, and NDOT will administer that. We also have matching funds from not only NDOT, but the state of California, the state of Utah, as well as RTC FAST. So again, this was awarded. Some of the efforts that we'll accomplish with that is data acquisition from vehicles, multi-state operational website, and the details of a lot of this are still being worked out. We're working very closely with our operations division as well as the staff at FAST, as well as the operations folks from the other states. So as we develop scope and topics, we can provide updates as requested. But the point is we're all very excited to be working on this region-wide infrastructure communication plan to make the whole corridor operation more effectively. And we want to make progress on that very quickly because we're hearing that there might be another round of that funding, and if we can show some early success, that certainly helps us rise to the top for another selection. We are going to continue coordination and planning along the entire corridor. We again have commitment from our partner states to continue supporting this effort financially as well as with staff time, so that just shows the success, and we're very excited about that. And we're looking at extending the alliance to include Idaho and Montana. When we first began this, there wasn't a huge amount of interest from those states. Now that they see our momentum and our success, there's some interest in joining that, and it certainly makes sense to continue that on all the way north. And the website is www.i15alliance.org, and there's my contact information again. On the website, I have to give a little plug. We also created a video which includes interviews with some of the DOT directors, and it's, I'm a little biased, but I think it's a very good video, so it's right there on our website. Please take a look. Any questions?
Very good. Comments or questions? Councilman Hafen.
Is my mic on?
I believe they are. Yeah. Okay.
But thank you.
And that list is always changing. We're always adding them on, so it might be a older list, but I believe that the city of Mesquite has been participating and should be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sandra, good work on both of those programs. I wanted to ask, with that grant, how often are you looking at updating, revising that 10-year prioritized list of projects with the other members?
And that's something we're talking about with all the alliance partners. We'd certainly like to update as projects go out. Do we need to bring others in? Do we need to reprioritize? Something that was just thrown out at one of our meetings is maybe every 2 to 3 years. Doing it on a yearly basis might become somewhat cumbersome, but that's a decision we're still working through with our alliance partners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to personally thank Sandra as well. She works really closely with our staff, and she goes above and beyond in making sure that we are included and advised of the studies and efforts that they've got going on. So I thank you for being a great partner with us.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Curtis Miles, who's CEO of the Las Vegas Monorail Company, and he is going to educate us on all that is going on with the monorail.
Thank you, members of the commission, Ms. Quigley, especially thanks to Commissioner June Kiliani for her very gracious comments about the Las Vegas monorail. The monorail has been the source of a very rich source of stories over the past several years. Some of them have actually been accurate. Some of them are wanting for facts. But I'm here today to just give you an update of where we are, what we've been through the last few years, and where we think that the company and the system sits in the entire spectrum of transportation and infrastructure in the valley. I'm going to go through a few items, where we are today, our reconstitution of our board, and why we went through that process, the debt restructuring that we've spent legally about 30 months doing, but practically we've been spending since about February of 2008 working on. The operational sustainability of the system, how the system compares nationally with systems of similar size and scope, and then what the system does to actually bring value and benefits to the community. First, to start with our board, when the company started out with a nine-seated board, 9 board seats, 5 members seated, and we basically worked with that group over the course of the last, probably 7 years, and through the restructuring process, we reconstituted our board. Our board is made up of 7 members now. The chairman of our board is Mr. Pat Shalmy, he has a lot of formers. He's former county manager, former county planner, former head of Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce, former president of Nevada Power, and is currently chairman of our board. Next is Bruce Woodbury, who's also vice chairman of our board, who also has a number of formers and a couple of pretty prominent currents. Mr. Woodbury is a partner in Jolly Ergo Woodbury in Standish, and he is also former chairman of this very important body, as well as a former county commissioner, long-term county commissioner. Mr. Tony Santo is former senior executive for what was then Harrah's Entertainment, which became Caesars Entertainment through their sale and purchase. Next, and these next 2 gentlemen are here with us today, as well as Mr. Woodbury, sitting right behind me. Mr. Mark Russell is a senior VP and general counsel at Mirage Hotel. He's also with Mirage Resorts International, long-time member of our community, has worked for a couple of different companies, most recently with MGM, and prior to that with Mirage Resorts.
And I'll also just quickly add that Mr. Russell has sat on several of our advisory committees and been a valuable resource, so thank you.
Thanks for that, Tina. I appreciate that. I was going to mention also that Mr. Russell has been a very, very interested person in transportation in our community over the last several years, and as Tina mentions, has served on many advisory boards for not only the RTC, but for the county. Next is Mr. Rick Mazer. Rick is the regional president for Caesars Entertainment. Rick, I like to refer to Rick as a person running the east side of the Strip. He's responsible for about just under 10,000 rooms on the east side of the Strip, which is a significant amount. And Rick has been with Caesars quite a while. He's also served on a couple of boards here for the county and is very interested in transportation. These last 2 gentlemen, they're not here today with us, but these last 2 gentlemen come to us as a result of our restructuring activities. Part of the restructuring involved the creditors, us recommending to the creditors and them accepting that they place or name 2 members to our board. We thought that was important for them to stay engaged and involved in the system as we take it forward. The first gentleman is a gentleman named Michael Solo. Mr. Solo is the chairman and managing partner of K. Scholler Law Firm, which is about a 500-person law firm headquartered in New York. And then last, but certainly not least, is Mr. Robert Manzo. Mr. Manzo started a restructuring firm several years ago, has been in restructuring business for a long time, and is now Senior VP at Capstone Advisory Group, which is a international business management restructuring advisory group. Okay, so those are our 7 members. It's a very community-minded group. And I'll admit to you, we were a little skeptical about having creditor representatives on our board. These 2 gentlemen changed our mind about that from day one. They're very interested in what goes on in Las Vegas. Both of them have worked on projects here in Las Vegas dating back almost 2 decades. Mr. Solo worked on the Aladdin restructuring when it was the Aladdin Hotel and eventually became a part of Planet Hollywood. Mr. Solo has worked on at least 7 companies that I'm aware of that are headquartered here in Las Vegas in terms of restructuring and helping them finance projects. So they're very interested in Las Vegas, and we're very happy about how we were able to accomplish that. This next part of the presentation, and I'm not going to take a lot of time today, but the next part of this presentation kind of reminds me of this quote from Steve Jobs, and it reminds me of what I thought when I came to Las Vegas Monorail Company. There are a lot of layers to Las Vegas Monorail Company when I came. There was a lot of interest. There were a lot of stories. But it's a very complex financing that put the system together. And I don't want to make light of it. I'm looking at the backup for your agenda here. That's one binder of about 12 that are on my desk that are the documents associated with our restructuring. It's very complex. But I'm going to try to simplify it for you. We started the legal restructuring back in January of 2010, January 13th, 2010. And I mentioned earlier that 2 years prior to that, we had been in discussions and in various agreements and understandings with the bond insurer and creditor groups about how to get this thing fixed financially. It was complicated. Our restructuring, our bankruptcy and restructuring efforts were further complicated by the fact that AMBAC, the bond insurer of our first-year bonds, went into what is the equivalent of a bankruptcy. In the insurance industry, my understanding, I'm not an expert, is that when insurance companies go into bankruptcy, they really go into something called rehabilitation. And when AMBAC filed for their rehabilitation shortly after we filed for our bankruptcy, that magnified the complexities of our bankruptcy, which is one of the reasons why it's taken so long. But the court finally approved a plan of reorganization for us May 9th of this year. And that plan basically accomplished some things that we set out to do when we first started these discussions with our creditors and the bond insurer. First, and probably foremost, it reduced our debt load. Our board, when we first started having discussions about addressing the debt, and the debt has been the subject of a number of news articles and stories about the system and why it's quote-unquote not doing what it was supposed to do, the board went through some very deliberate and very intense conversation. And there were days of those conversations that the board was contemplating, really what to do with this thing. And at the end of the day, at the end of all of those conversations, there was a consensus that this system provides benefits. It provides significant benefits. We should do what we think we can do in this process to save it. So we decided to file for bankruptcy and save it. Saving it meant writing down debt. There was no other way around it. We negotiated with the creditors to write down the debt obligations of the company from $757 million to $13 million. No one is proud of writing down nearly $750 million worth of debt. But it had to be done in order to preserve the benefits that we think the system provides and to preserve what we think the future of the system can be if it's further incorporated in the long-range planning for transportation in the valley. That restructuring creates for us flat, low, stable debt service. Before the restructuring, the peak of our debt service was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $50+ million a year. It's flat now at about $640,000, which we can clearly pay. We had some goals that we wanted to make sure that we attained out of the restructuring, and when we got through this process, first and foremost was to maintain the nonprofit status of the system. We felt it was very important for us not only to keep it a not-for-profit system, but to also keep it, create the potential for the system to also use that status to attract federal dollars. Second, it allows the company to pay for its ongoing capital replacement, which I'll talk about just shortly here. Specifically provides for allowances to pursue expansion of the system. That was one of our goals. It became clear to us after several months of discussion that that was one of the goals of the creditors. And once we got together and figured out that we have some common interest, the discussions got a lot easier. It adds, as I mentioned, 2 new bondholder-appointed board members. Some of the misconceptions about the system center around the sustainability of the system itself. So I want to address a couple of things just to dispel some of the misreported notions out there about us. First, the trains. These were 30-year vehicles. Commissioner June Kiliani stated that it's third world technology. This is really common technology. I know that was partially tongue-in-cheek, and I didn't take it personally. But this is really current technology. It's simple technology, but it's current technology. This is basically a dump truck tire, as Jacob used to refer to it as, sitting on a beam and going north and south. It's very simple. For it to be an automated system, it's very complex. And there are a lot of systems that maintain it. Our trains are 30-year trains. They've been in operation now. They've actually been in motion on the system itself for about 9 years. Bombardier is obligated in our O&M agreement to maintain these trains for their entire life. If it comes about that we extend the system or find it necessary for us to replace the trains, then we'll replace the trains with these vehicles, or we can replace these trains with an updated version of these vehicles. Bombardier today is installing in 3 different places, 3 different sites around the world, an updated version of a monorail that is a substantially different version than this one. It's a bigger vehicle. It's a slightly heavier vehicle. It's walk-through. It has a capacity of about 400 passengers versus 250 for our vehicles. They're not 4 separate cars. There are separate cars, but the cars are all connected, and you can walk and see through each of the vehicles, which is different than our vehicle today. Our capital replacement program calls for us to start replacing vehicles in about 2034, some 22 years from now. So vehicle concerns are not an imminent concern. Maintaining them and keeping them on the guideway is what the focus is, and that's what Bombardier is paid to do. Secondly is the control systems. The fare collection system, much like the fare collection system for the bus system here, it will go through its various upgrades for technology and cash transactions and card transactions, and that's essentially upgrading software and buying hardware. Our fare collection system today is scheduled to start being replaced in about 9.5 years. If we find it more expedient and cost-effective for us to replace it sooner, we'll start replacing it sooner. But today, we don't expect to start replacing until 2020. Train control system, this is a fully automated system. So these next 2 systems are critical for us. There are no drivers on our trains, and our trains have more sensors than I think you can probably fit, in one entire vehicle. There's sensors everywhere. And those sensors are all tied to those 2 systems, the train control system and the communication systems. We update those pretty regularly, about every 2 years or so. We go through an upgrade for the computer systems that run the train control, as well as the sensors and a number of the connections. The entire train control is scheduled to be replaced in 2024. As I mentioned before, if it comes about as a result of a project or an extension or something like that, and it's expedient and cost-effective for us to replace it sooner, we'll replace it sooner. But today, it's scheduled for 2024. The communication system is very much like the train control system. It not only allows the operators in the control center to communicate to the trains and for the trains to communicate with them, it allows the trains to communicate with each other, which is one of the safety features of the system. That's not scheduled to be replaced for another 23 years. However, we go through regular upgrades of the computer systems and the software that control that system, and we can extend it out 35 years, but much like the other systems, If it comes about and cost-effective and efficient for us to replace it sooner, we'll replace it sooner. Okay, so what is it today? It's still a 3.9-mile system. It's connected to 8 resort properties, some 25,000 rooms of the 140-some-odd thousand that are in this town, and the 90-plus thousand that are located on the Strip, an immediate adjacent Strip. And it's connected to the Las Vegas Convention Center. It is a very cost-effective and efficient system in moving people into and out of those facilities. It provides mobility primarily to visitors. We have never, made the claim that this system was designed, although none of us who are on the board or who are here today were here when this system was designed and envisioned, but the system was never designed, as best we can tell, to address moving locals. However, the system is conducive to moving certain types of employee traffic in and out of the corridor, and connected to these 8 properties, that represents some 40-plus thousand employees. So it has some advantages, as Commissioner June Kiliani mentioned earlier. It's carried over 50 million people since its opening. That compares, your bus system, I think, carries north of 55 million people a year, which is, it's a very successful and highly awarded system, and compares very favorably in the United States as far as bus systems goes. Our system has carried 50 million in 3.9 miles. It's a fairly short system, which I'll show you shortly. Okay, it's a resort corridor system. It's intended for visitors. We provide significant access and mobility, and I'll show you here shortly what we mean by that, but in carrying those 50 million passengers, a good deal of the passengers that we carry them in and out of the convention center. It probably represents about 20-25% of all of our customers in certain portions of the year. But during the major conventions that are here in town, where we see the most congestion that occurs in this town is during those 5 conventions that you see in that top part of that slide: National Association of Broadcasters, ConExpo, CES, the SEMA convention, which is going to occur here in about a month or so, and the World of Concrete. All of those conventions are citywide conventions, and they're bringing in north of 85,000 people to town, and as many as 160,000. During those conventions, which are typically about 3 days, we carry somewhere between 65,000 and 70,000 riders into and out of the convention center. During CES this year, there were 160,000 people in town for CES. Not necessarily all at the same time, over the course of about a 3.5, 4-day convention. And during those 3.5 days, we carried 87,000 people into and out of the convention center in 3.5 days, which is roughly about 20% of all the trips that were made in and out of the convention center. This is a significant system when it comes to citywide conventions. That's the equivalent to 22,200 cab trips. What does that look like? What does 334 cab trips look like? If you stand at the corner of Paradise and Convention Center and count cabs that are going in and out of the convention center, and did that for about 9 days, you'd reach 22,334. It's a significant amount of capacity. It's also equivalent to 1,218 bus trips. The RTC is a preeminent bus operator in the United States. There's no question about it. What 1,200 buses means is not lost on this organization. It's a significant amount of capacity. Okay? Congestion relief. Vehicle miles traveled is how the FTA and organizations like the RTC rate themselves on how well they're doing what they were intended to do. Are we relieving vehicle miles traveled? We've relieved 2.2 million vehicle miles traveled in 2011. That's about the equivalent of all the traffic on Las Vegas Boulevard for the entire month of February. I'll say it again. That's all the traffic on Las Vegas Boulevard for the entire month of February. That's a lot of capacity. That's what we did in 2011. Air quality benefits. We We reduced greenhouse emissions by over 35 tons in 2011, 400 tons of pollutants since the beginning of operations. It provides air quality benefits because it's a 100% electric system. It uses it emits no carbon emissions through our operations. Now, how does it compare? This last part of the presentation is basically how does it compare to other systems of similar size or similar application? That's a list of transit systems or train systems in the United States. We've omitted from that list the Long Island Railroad in New York. Nothing compares to the Long Island Railroad in New York in the United States. And we've omitted a couple other systems in the subway system in New York because nothing compares to those. But taking those systems out and leaving the remaining systems in, our system's a fairly short system. I think we're ranked on that list somewhere around 22, 3.9 miles. In fact, the one just below us there just added a section that's going to take it above us. Okay. In terms of ridership, when you compare these systems and look at the National Transit Database and ridership, we move up to about 19th. We carried about 5.2 million riders in 2011. Excuse me, 2010. Fare revenue, we move further up the list in fare revenue. I think we're ranked there about 8th in terms of total fare revenue, which is significant. For a system that's about 22nd in fare revenue, we move, length, we move up to 8th in total revenue. Next, we get into the ways that the FTA looks at systems when it's considering funding for system and rates them. Our system, in terms of riders per mile, is about 5th. I think 5th of all the systems in the United States, with the exception of New York. We rank number 5. We'd rate very favorably against nearly every other system in the United States of similar size, similar scope, similar application. Fare revenue per mile, no one compares to us. It's not very close. We do a lot of revenue per mile. The way that this system is applied, where it is the entire story about why we do so well. It's in the Las Vegas resort corridor. Take 4 miles and put it anywhere else in the United States and it doesn't perform like this. Taxpayer subsidy, we don't get any. It was intended that way. We intended to keep it that way. In terms of fare revenue per rider, again, there are not very many systems that are close. We do a significant amount of fare revenue per ride, which is not, it's a double-edged sword. It's good that we generate enough revenue to cover the system's costs. It's bad that the fares are so high, which is one of the things that we keep at the top of mind. Fare box recovery, we recover about what your strip services recover, maybe slightly more, in terms of revenue divided by cost. Okay? Your strip services are some of the most, if not the most successful services in the United States. They're up there in the top 4 or 5 in terms of routes. This system ranks fairly high and favorable compared to those. Okay? When we embarked on this arduous journey to get through this restructuring, we were not concerned about the past in this system. It is where it is. It's very difficult to pick up $200 million worth of guideway, $90 million worth of train and move it to where you want. It's nearly impossible without tearing it up. So it is where it is. Our thought is about where the system needs to go, where we are today and what we want to try to achieve with it. And Wayne Gretzky, this was a quote that Wayne Gretzky made when he was asked about why he thought he was so successful. He says, look, I don't think about where the puck was, I go to where the puck's going to be. It's too late to think about where you were. And here's how we think about this system when we, quote unquote, skate to the puck. Expand the benefits of the system that the system already generates. We already generate a significant amount of pollution benefits, a significant amount of congestion relief, a significant amount of access and mobility to, especially during those very large conventions that this city has. We want to make sure that we sustain those and, if at all possible, extend them. more effective connections for strip corridor workers. I mean, I've met with Commissioner Giuliani a couple times, in that if it's not the first thing she says to me, it's the last thing she says to me. So when she said it again, I was not at all surprised. And then use the system to bring more federal dollars back to the state. Our state is a donor state. When we pay roughly half of the cost of a gallon of gas, we're paying that half a cost of a gallon of gas to other states. And the RTC has done, I mean, just an outstanding job in growing from where we were before, which was nearly an entirely donor state, to something that gets us closer to being about even. We're still primarily a donor state, and if at all possible, we'd like to achieve that. That's my presentation, and I'm available for any questions that you may have, and our board members are here to answer any questions you may have of them.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the board? Commissioner Giuliani.
Surprise.
You already heard my first part, but I do appreciate the time that you took with me. And you know, it's here. I've never made bones about it, but you know what? If we can make it function, I think that's got to be the ultimate goal. And I think personally that's the back of the house, that we can move folks, and that assists RTC and so forth. I just hope when you add your other people that you'll have some gender balance on the board. In addition to that, I do think down the road too, Curtis, we may have talked about this, is the location in the hotels. As Tom Waits says, you can't find it with the Geiger counter. And so sometime, that may need to be part of your review as you look at the upgrading of the cars or whatever may come into place. What three countries is Bombardier doing the changes? I know they were test marketing something in France, but I don't think it's the same thing.
I think they're building a 60 or 70 kilometer system in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia, okay.
They're building a couple of systems in South America. One's about 3 or 4 times the size of this one. And then another one is about, I think it's about 20, 25 kilometers.
Okay. So the speed for this is probably not the necessary thing, but if you look at how you move people, to me, that was always, is there an interconnectivity? If we did light rail on Maryland or Flamingo or something, and especially if a stadium comes to UNLV, anticipating that additional corridor impact that's going to be there, right, and then connecting with our BRT, and, you know, I think that's got to be part of the conversation, so
Absolutely.
we make it easy for folks. A second thing is park and rides. If you ever do get to the point where we do something with employees, where is the accessible space to be able to do parking? And that's got to be something that's looked at. You might want to look at you know, it's a big selling point on sustainability, so maybe there's some carbon offsets like we were doing in Denver a couple of years back with presidential campaign, but I just remembered that you could sign on to a website, or you have people that are conscious, especially those coming into the convention
Right,
now.
right,
They're working with Repurpose America and a variety of other groups, but maybe Monorail can at least market it's a CO2 credit of some sort.
That's an excellent recommendation.
Just as an idea. Do you qualify then as a nonprofit? Do you do the 990s? Are you a 501c3?
We do a 990,
Okay,
yes.
so you're a 501c3?
IRS Form 990. Yeah.
Okay. And in that, then, do you qualify for additional grants in some way, or are there federal dollars that?
There are some non-transportation, non-US DOT grants that the system may be eligible for. We don't rate very high against the other entities that are eligible for those grants, because one of the reasons is that we generate so much revenue, we
Right.
cover our costs.
With your fare box, yeah.
Yeah, so but there are other non-transportation grants that we're eligible for. They're relatively small, and they're relatively oversubscribed and underfunded.
Okay. And then in this debt reorg, there's no impact on the local governments, but I remember, was there not some bond support or rating from the state of Nevada that
No, the way the bonds were issued by the State of Nevada Department of Business and Industry, but they were issued as non-recourse bonds to the state, which essentially means the state's not on the hook
not
for
on
anything.
the hook for
Not on the
anything?
hook for anything.
I think that was Senator Neal that made sure that was there, actually.
Yeah. So
Okay.
all the responsibility fell to the company, and it's bond insured.
And it's bond insured. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Ross.
Thank you. Thank you, Curtis. Great presentation. Couple of things. The federal dollars you talked about, you're not going to be competing against the Regional Transportation Commission for federal dollars, are you?
No. I'll reveal our relationship.
Okay.
We go back to 8th grade,
Yep.
Gibson High School basketball. We're longtime members of the community, and we have a stake here.
Well, he's old.
Steve was a center. Anyway, no, we see our part as being able to enhance or grow the pie. If there's any possibility that we're going to just reallocate the pie, we're not interested. It's not what we did this for. If there's an opportunity for us to help grow the pie, that's our interest.
Thank you for that. I have to say this. We did play basketball together, Councilman. Yes, I did play basketball once in my life.
Some 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's not the point I wanted to make. The point I want to make is I'm just thrilled to death to see what you've done and where you are today. I think it's magnificent. And I say that because, and Ms. Quigley, you're going to hear me say this again. I think we as transportation people, as a board, are not taking full advantage of the assets in this valley. There's a rail line that goes from Henderson all the way through town that's not doing anything. Ms. Quigley, you know that. We've had this conversation. The monorail, another asset that we need to tap into for the long-term health of transportation in the valley. It doesn't go to the airport. It doesn't go downtown. It doesn't go to the Veterans Hospital. And I know I'm thinking great big here. And I've had these great big conversations with you too.
Someone said, don't make small plans.
Yeah. But it's just exciting to see this and the success and continued success of the monorail and everything you've done to it. Of course, you've had a lot of help. I see that in the audience. And thank all of you gentlemen too for being part of that, because this is an asset and you see it. I see it as a Las Vegas, and we want to see it continue to grow. So thank you very much for that, and keep up the good work. And I'm not going to play basketball with you.
I just want to follow up on Curtis's answer to you, too, as well, regarding the federal dollars, that RTC is certainly working closely with our special counsel who focuses on FTA issues and FTA grants to assure that there would not be any conflict for those dollars. And in fact, the dollars that were brought in for the monorail would be dollars on top of dollars that the RTC would already be eligible
Mr. Chairman,
for.
if I have one more question. Do you two see, because we just went through the Regional Transportation Authority process, do we see a tie here coming one day? I mean, are we thinking long-term in regards to regional transportation, monorail, maybe some light rail, Ms. Quigley? I know I'm thinking big here, but we've got to have these discussions today for the benefit of the residents in the valley tomorrow. What's the answer?
The answer is we will work closely with our boards to solicit guidance and direction as we move forward.
Or you'll listen to us.
Yeah, we are.
Could we cue the Gibson Junior High School team photo?
Fortunately, there's no photo.
Well, I have one.
Curtis, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask a last question. Could you be more specific on your thoughts as far as providing more effective connections for the Strip corridor workers? This is one of the views that people with whom I have contact that are not right there in the Strip corridor are concerned about. It provides something for the casinos, it provides for the visitors, which are important to our livelihood here. But how are you thinking about providing better connections for those many, many people who work on the Strip?
Well, fortunately for us, the RTC has pretty well developed the Strip routes. I mean, there's a number of services on the Strip. There are a couple of services that are adjacent to the Strip. There's a bus stop immediately underneath the station that we have at Sahara. Today, we charge $1 for locals, which also applies to the workers that are on the Strip. What I mean by that, at least initially, is the connection is there. Physically, it's there, and it's as good as it can get today in terms of the physical connection. I mean, we can't run buses on our guideway, and we can't run our trains on your road. So the connections are as good as they can get. What I'm talking about today is making sure that people understand that the connections are there and how to use them.
So you mainly thinking about a place where they might park and then use the connections to get to where they work?
Exactly.
Because most of the workers work at one casino, and they go to that casino. I was just trying to visualize what the advantage would be of going to someplace else to get to the casino rather than going straight to the casino and parking. But you're talking about where they might be able, you'd have a large space where you'd have them park and then they could connect.
Right.
You take
Taking
away
taking
traffic.
advantage, I'm sorry, taking advantage of the park and rides that have been developed by the RTC and that are planned to be developed by the RTC, and making sure that those who are going to utilize those facilities are aware of the various connections that they can use to get to and from work. That's
So
what we're talking.
mainly it's an awareness campaign.
Primarily,
For
yes.
those who work. on the
Initially, it's
strip.
an awareness campaign, and as part of this Regional Rapid Transit Advisory Committee, there was a lot of discussion about how do we take advantage of existing assets that we've got to move our employees who are the heart and soul of our transit system and who need us more than anybody else. And Commissioner Giuliani brought up the recommendation that we do start to look at park and rides that do tie in the monorail and the RTC transit systems. So at this point, we're real early on, but a lot of discussions, coordination, and then reaching out to those major employers in the valley and letting them know what we've got, and so they can inform their employees.
Thank you.
Well, one of our board members represents Caesars Entertainment, Ms. Mazer, and Caesars Entertainment is one of the participants in the RTC Club Ride program. And one of the ideas is just expanding that, getting more utilization of that program, and getting information out about how people can utilize the various facilities, including park and ride, the bus routes, the monorail, to get to and from where they want to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Giuliani?
Thank you. Sorry, Curtis. Do you all own the property under the, on Sahara?
No, we have an easement there. I think I know what you're talking, the vacant
that
lot
empty
that's just to
parking
the
lot
east
that
of
just
that.
sits there.
No, I think that's still owned by Paradise, I think it's called Paradise
LLC
Properties
or
LLC. We have a relationship with them. We have had discussions with them in the past about using that potentially as a park.
Because
and
that
ride
would be a
facility.
good
It's
location,
natural.
I would think,
Yeah.
is a natural place, and it's never used. So those are the types of things. And again, I will reiterate, if we're going to get employees, they don't always know, but if we have it where you can hop on the bus and then ride it to the monorail to connect to the whatever. But let's look at that incentive thing. I'll try to see if I can find my file, because the unions negotiated back in, I want to say Oregon, where they actually had another extra hour that was compensated by the employer as a way to get them to not drive a car in. And I think part of what has to be looked at, and this is for the Strip as well, is as you look at your investment and our property values skyrocketed and everybody bought at the worst time and now those values are nothing. How much do you want to continue investing in parking garages, for example? I mean, to me, I was told at the high time, it was like $10,000 per parking space to construct. That's an investment that maybe they could direct those dollars into something else or turn that parking garage into something else and not have to deal with the employees. So there's a nexus there that you got to look at those assets. So I'll try to see if I can find my file on that. But that wasn't, it was just a different way to look at how do you encourage people, and there are ways where you have a win-win for both groups. So I'm just suggesting that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next speaker is Andrew Mack, who is representing, there we go. Our next speaker is Andrew Mack, who is with us representing Express West, formerly known as Desert Express. And this is a project that we all know a little bit about, but Andrew's going to make us a lot smarter on it.
I gotta lower the microphone first. I'm not playing Curtis in basketball either. My name is Andrew Mack. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Express West. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you and to talk a little bit about our project. Just to provide initially a quick overview of what the project is, it's approximately 185 miles between Southern California and Las Vegas, and the track is located primarily within the I-15 freeway right-of-way. So 2 alignment alternatives essentially were evaluated in the environmental impact statement. One right up the median of the I-15 and another primarily along the side of the I-15. And what was formally approved by the lead and cooperating agencies is an alignment that's primarily along the side of the I-15. So we are within the I-15 fence line right-of-way, but we are located right at the far outside edge of the fence line. And that was done intentionally to allow for future expansion and improvements to the I-15 without impacting the median of the freeway. The train is designed to be exclusive, all new, double track. There's no sharing with freight trains, and there's no at-grade crossings. So anywhere that we come onto an interchange or an overpass, we either go over or under that overpass. So there's no grade crossings either with vehicles or pedestrian people. The train is also passenger only. There will be no freight carried on the line. And the train will be run with fully electric, next generation high-speed trains. We often get the question, why are we using old technology? Why aren't we using the newest and the best? And let me assure you, the trains that will be procured for this system are the newest available and commercially operating high-speed trains that operate all over the world. These trains are capable of going 220 miles an hour. They're fully electric. The environmental benefits are astounding. And I'll talk a little bit later why we're holding the speed at 150 miles an hour, why it makes sense for this corridor. In terms of travel time at 150 miles an hour, we're looking at an hour and 20 minutes from the Southern California station location to Las Vegas, as compared to in free flow a 3-hour drive, but oftentimes in congestion, Friday through Sunday in particular, that drive is very unpredictable and could take as long as 8 or 10 hours in the worst case scenario. One of the things in doing focus groups and in talking with people and potential future customers, one of the things that we learned is that one of the reasons why people drive to Las Vegas is to have the freedom to leave or come and go whenever they want. And so we wanted to make sure that we provided that as well with our service. So you'll see on the next bullet that our current operating plan calls for 20-minute service on peak, which is basically, this isn't a typical commuter type rail line. Our peak runs basically from Friday morning all the way through Sunday night, and we plan to operate trains every 20 minutes during that time to provide people that flexibility so that if they get to the station, they miss a train, another one's coming in 20 minutes. And this is now at an average round trip fare, which is what our financing is modeled on, of $89 round trip. The last point here is that we want to deliver true intermodal facilities, both here in Las Vegas and in Southern California. And what that means here is, and we've had some preliminary conversations with the RTC staff about bus connections and designing the station site to provide for that connectivity, to make it as easy and convenient as possible for people to, once they arrive in Las Vegas, get to their final destination, to whatever resort or area that might be. So we're looking forward to getting deeper into that dialogue as we move in through final design and looking at how the station can be laid out to best accommodate different modes of connectivity. One of the other criticisms that's been talked about is this train that's going to Victorville, or that's coming from Victorville. And what this slide really talks about is a broader vision for the project, recognizing that the project from Victorville to Las Vegas in its initial phase makes absolute commercial sense, and it makes great environmental sense as well, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But looking to the future, moving to where the hockey puck is headed, what's happened is we've been developing this project over the years. The world of high-speed rail in the United States has sort of evolved up around us to where when we started, we were sort of alone out here in the West. Now what's happened with the evolution of the California High-Speed Rail Program, a national focus on high-speed rail, which has led to a regional focus in the Southern California basin for improved higher speed service that serves the urban area of Southern California. So when you look at this map, you'll notice about 50 miles to the west of Victorville is Palmdale. Now, what happens at Palmdale immediately with the connection of that 50 miles is a connection to the existing Metrolink system that is currently operating and running in Southern California, which is news to a lot of people that there is a rail system in Southern California. Trains run from LA Union Station to Palmdale today on commuter rail service with 10 stops in between in about an hour. There's a memorandum of understanding that's been executed between the Southern California Metropolitan Transportation Authority and the California High-Speed Rail Authority to take $1 billion of California high-speed rail money and dedicate that to improvements in the Southern California rail network, with a focus on LA to Palmdale. So with that connection to 50 miles, we really capture the best of both worlds. We get a rail diversion by capturing essentially all of the cities and communities that are currently served by the Metrolink system in Palmdale, and then in Victorville, which I'll talk about more on the next slide, we get that nexus of all of the drivers that are coming up from Southern California, and that's where Victorville makes such great sense. Now, ultimately, with the extension and development of the California high-speed rail system, which is shown on this map in yellow, the ultimate plan would be for complete interoperability, both between our system, the California high-speed rail system, and then ultimately down into Los Angeles. California high-speed rail, in their revised and adopted business plan, has identified their initial construction segment to the south from Merced to Bakersfield, which puts them 50 miles away from a connection point in Palmdale. And they've committed to their initial operating segment. There was a debate between going to the north or going to the south, and they've concluded that extending their initial operating segment to the south to Palmdale is the right way to go. So now we're actually in a situation where Desert Express started as a train, between Southern California and Las Vegas, really single purpose to move people between those two metropolitan areas, to Express West, which is really now a piece of a Southwest rail network. And when you look at this slide, a lot of attention in Washington is given to the Northeast Corridor because it's much more visible and you can touch and feel it there. But there's a Southwest network here with 25+ million people, and if you question whether those people are ready and willing to take trains, just look at the performance of the Pacific Surfliner, which is the second most ridden Amtrak line in the country, second only to the Northeast Corridor, which runs from San Diego to Los Angeles. So there is a movement, there is a change. The consumer, we think, is ready for an alternative to an unreliable and dangerous drive on the I-15, and we think that Express West provides it and also provides a catalyst for a broader high-speed rail vision and network for the Southwest. And I'm sure Tom Skanke will go into that in a little bit more detail and what the future potential is, extending beyond to Denver and south into Phoenix as well. So focusing first on the initial system, which I'll call it from Victorville to Las Vegas, this line, 185 miles, fits squarely within the sweet spot of where high-speed rail around the world has been effective, between 200 and 500 miles. And to be effective, you have to deliver real travel time savings. And what we've found is that at 150 miles an hour, reducing that driving time by 2/3, from 3 hours in free flow to an hour and 20 minutes, we will attract the riders that will support the project's financing. Once you go 220 miles an hour, the exponential, costs in maintenance, energy, the environmental impact to save 7 or 8 minutes or a nominal amount just isn't enough to attract additional riders to support the project's financing. So 150 miles an hour from Victorville to Las Vegas makes good sense from an operations standpoint. Now, looking at Victorville, the second picture diagram below the upper is that freeway infrastructure that exists in Southern California. All of the east-west freeways, they all funnel into the I-15 all south of Victorville. So when you consider, people ask, why don't you bring this train right into the population center of Southern California? Well, that's a great question. where is the population center of Southern California? If we put that train station at downtown Union Station, Ontario, Anaheim, you're asking people to drive into the congested part of Southern California. And for us, a majority of our riders live an average of 45 miles away from that high desert station, primarily in the Inland Empire. Those folks aren't going to drive down into Anaheim or Ontario or LA Union Station to take a train back to Las Vegas. So Victorville makes tremendous sense to be a collection point where the 19 million people in 2011 that drove on the I-15 between Southern California and Las Vegas all converge right there in Victorville. It's a common point where every driver, it's really the most convenient point for every driver who's coming up from Southern California to get on the train. So talk a little bit about our status and where we are. This project from Victorville to Las Vegas is fully federally permitted. I'm just going to say that one more time. The Express West project from Victorville to Las Vegas is fully authorized and permitted by all of the relevant federal agencies with jurisdiction over the project. So this process started publicly in June of 2006 with public scoping meetings on an EIS that was led by the Federal Railroad Administration. 5 short years later, the FRA issued, as the lead agency, the record of decision on the environmental document, which included a supplemental EIS through the process that addressed a number of project changes in response to comments from the public and agencies. And in the ensuing 3 or 4 months following the lead agency's record of decision, the cooperating agencies each issued their records of decision, including the Bureau of Land Management, the Surface Transportation Board, and both the Nevada and California divisions of the Federal Highway Administration. One of the key elements of the environmental document, particularly relevant to transportation agencies, is a design manual that we were able to reach concurrence between both divisions of FHWA, both Caltrans, NDOT, and FRA for how this railroad would integrate with the existing highway infrastructure without negatively impacting either its current operation and safety or the future plans for expansion. And through the great work of this board, this agency, the RTC, as well as Nevada DOT and Caltrans, that process was a tremendous success, and it resulted in a consensus document that's actually part of our published records of decision and is a guidance document ultimately for how our design will be conducted to integrate with the existing highway system. It's the first time in the country that a high-speed rail project has been approved to be co-located within an existing freeway. So we're very proud of that work. In October, the Surface Transportation Board, which is the federal agency with exclusive regulatory authority over the project, issued a certificate of public convenience and necessity for the project. And the layman's interpretation of what that means is that's the federal permission slip that grants us the authority to operate as an interstate railroad and to carry passengers. That, too, is the first time in the United States that we're aware of that we could find that a private passenger-only railroad has been granted the authority to operate interstate service. And then in December of 2011, we executed a lease agreement with the Bureau of Land Management for all of the federal land that's required for the project, which includes all of the federal land that is actually that the I-15 sits on. A majority of the I-15 is actually U.S. land administered by the BLM. We've now executed and paid for a lease agreement that gives us rights to all of the federal land that we need. Now, talking a little bit about and connecting to the last slide and what's happened in Southern California and with this connectivity, what started out as an idea has really gained institutional backing in Southern California. There's a number of agencies that are involved in that Palmdale to Victorville connection. One is a Joint Powers Authority, which exists and is created and but between LA County and San Bernardino County and a number of the cities in the high desert. That Joint Powers Authority adopted a resolution not only supporting the Express West project, but also supporting inclusion of rail within an existing EIS document that they're pursuing for what was originally a highway corridor between Victorville and Palmdale. So in order to effectuate the inclusion of rail into that environmental study, other agencies had to concur as well, including the San Bernardino Association of Governments and the Los Angeles Metropolitan Transportation Authority. And culminating in March of this year, all of the agencies with jurisdiction all agreed and formally approved the inclusion of high-speed rail at 150 miles an hour in the environmental analysis between Victorville and Palmdale. So now that process, under the leadership of these public agencies, is moving forward and includes the provision for high-speed rail between those two cities. Also in April of 2012, the Southern California Association of Governments released its 2035 Regional Transportation Plan. It included Express West and a connection to Palmdale as a strategic plan and part of its broader vision for high-speed rail in the region. And I think just this Monday, Nevada DOT adopted the first Nevada State Rail Plan, which also included the Express West project in it as well. Lastly, in July of 2012, the Los Angeles Metropolitan Transportation Authority, under the new leadership of Board Chairman LA County Supervisor Mike Antonovich, unanimously passed a resolution supporting the Express West project and our application under the Railroad Rehabilitation and Improvement Financing Program, affectionately referred to as RIF. That is the primary financing vehicle for our project. And just a brief background on that for those of you who aren't familiar with it. The program was established in 1998 under ICE-T. It's fully funded and authorized, doesn't require congressional action. It's administered by the Federal Railroad Administration. It's funded to a total lending capacity of $35 billion in the 10 years since its inception, and it currently has about $2 billion outstanding. So it currently has the authority and the funding to loan up to $33 billion for railroads, specifically for railroads. So this is kind of the fun slide. So we talk a little bit about the experience, and one of the key ideas behind this project is to deliver that Las Vegas experience as soon as you get to the station. So if it took you an hour to get to the station in Victorville for whatever reason, or it was traffic up the Cajon Pass, the key is you've arrived, you've made it. You can relax, you can kick back, you can check into your hotel, get your room key, get a couple of drink tickets, check your bags through to your room, and you're on the train, you're stress-free in an hour and 20 minutes, no matter what the weekend, if it's Super Bowl or March Madness or New Year's or whatever it is. In an hour and 20 minutes, you're going to be basically in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip with great connectivity, thanks to our cooperation with the RTC, to your final destination, and your bags will be waiting for you when you get to your room. So we're very focused, and we're turning our focus now on what that customer experience can really be and how we can really deliver on providing a product that you don't get in your car. Because the majority of the people who come to Las Vegas from around the world drive on the I-15. And that experience can be horrific, and we think we can deliver a product that is extremely competitive with that. In addition to providing a new transportation alternative, there are a number of just outright public benefits that the project will deliver, not the least of which, in my humble opinion, is the job creation. We're going to create, by UNLV's estimate, 80,000 primary and secondary jobs during the 5.5-year construction period. A third of those jobs are going to be right here in southern Nevada. And, you know, people have been critical, well, these are just temporary. These are high quality, high paying, living wage jobs in the construction industry, an industry both in Southern Nevada and in California that's been hardest hit by the recession. And it's going to be a sustained effort over a 5-year construction period. You know, there's a lot of companies that don't even last 5 years in this economy. And beyond that, there's an operating period that'll create additional jobs and additional economic output that's been estimated at close to $8 billion. There's another thing we're doing with this, which is creating a new industry in America. There doesn't currently exist high-speed rail. While a lot of what we're doing takes parts and pieces of really proven technology and construction methodology, this is a whole new application. And by training workers in this new application and looking what's happening down the road in California, we're creating a new workforce and a new trained workforce in a new industry that doesn't currently exist. Then there are some just basic environmental benefits. The reduction of pollutants in the corridor has been estimated at 40%. Because these trains are fully electric, they aren't source polluting. They will get energy both from Nevada Energy and from Southern Cal Edison, but they don't pollute themselves. The estimate by the environmental impact statement is 440,000 barrels of oil saved and a diversion of approximately 25% of the currently traveling I-15 visitors. Now there's a benefit, an environmental benefit to that because they're not driving their cars. There's a safety benefit of that because you're taking these private cars off of the road. There's also a commerce benefit by increasing the capacity of the I-15 for goods movement. The I-15, as Sandra mentioned, was designated as a corridor of the future, a corridor of national significance, and one of the primary reasons is because it serves as that primary route for goods movement from Port of LA and Port of Long Beach. And by taking private cars off the road and making more room for that truck and freight movement, there's a definite commerce benefit. And there's also an increase in tax revenues, you know, from sales, ticket sales, and from other economic activity generated in and around the train stations and by the train itself. So in summary, Express West is the first construction-ready high-speed rail project in the country. It's the only one with all of the federal environmental and implementation permits in hand, and it'll immediately put Southern Nevadans and Californians to work. We're federally licensed as a private interstate railroad. We'll relieve congestion on the I-15 corridor. We control the federal land that we need for the project. The project is backed by a sound business case. And just to underscore that point, we are a private railroad. We are applying for a federal loan that has been made available to private railroads. The obligation resides with the private company to pay back that loan. And we have a business case with 150 mile an hour, 80-minute trip time from Victorville to Las Vegas that demonstrates that it is a very profitable and sound business endeavor. And lastly, sort of leading into Tom Skanke's presentation and what I mentioned earlier, is that now the Express West is really can serve as a catalyst for a broader Southwest rail vision. And we really feel that if we can implement this project and demonstrate in a real way, in a tactical way, what high-speed rail can deliver and the benefits it can deliver, that you know, it'll just catalyze further development and further improvements in our rail system. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and board members, and those of you that are watching or listening. I got the privilege of seeing this project a long time ago. Mr. Mack, you and I met quite some time ago when I was in a different capacity. So I bought in then, and I'm still bought in to what you guys are doing, and you laid it out perfectly so everybody understands the entire process. I got 6 words for you. Run, hurry every chance you get, because that's how significant I see this project, and I see this rail line, because it is a system from Southern California to Las Vegas. And, you know, I talked about the assets we have in the valley and transportation needs. You haven't mentioned one thing, though, and that's terminal locations. Would you have you been discussing that? You guys are looking at that? Because I think I asked you that a couple of years ago.
Yeah. We have looked at station locations. There were 4 stations that were identified in the federal EIS document. 2 stations were approved to move forward. It's an either-or proposition. So we're currently in the process of evaluating those 2 station locations. One is just south of Flamingo. Both are on the west side of the 15 freeway. One is just south of Flamingo between Panorama Towers and Flamingo, south of the Rio. And the other is across from Mandalay Bay.
I say that because, commissioners, we talked big when Curtis was up earlier about tying everything together. Are we looking at our own Union Station here in Southern Nevada, where we tie in the monorail, the Express West, an RTC terminal? Maybe we can get Greyhound to move out of downtown? I think we have to be looking that direction. I think we have to be looking that big, because if we tie all these in, we've done our job.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate that comment, and that was one of the intents with today's presentation in terms of getting all of these major infrastructures together, that we were sharing information so that we could make plans for the future appropriately.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're looking at locations and it's tied into everything you're doing, you know, we need to be at the table. Everybody probably needs to be at the table to have that discussion. We'd certainly hate to have all these great transportation modes and they're all scattered all over the place and none of them are tied to each other. So I think it's time to start thinking that big, that a Union Station, for crying out loud, or whatever you want to call it. Well, I'd like to call it Las Vegas Station. Commissioners? Thank you,
Well,
Mr. Mayor,
we're
for the
committed to
presentation.
working with the RTC and the transit agencies here to realize that, for sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Giunchigliani.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. I just wanted to confirm, the 80-minute trip from Las Vegas is from where? Is that the
Victorville,
Victorville?
yeah.
Okay, and then from Victorville to Palmdale?
That travel time, you know, we haven't worked out the detailed simulations because the alignment is still, there's a number of alternatives,
Right.
but it's probably about 25 minutes.
There's no Metrolink, I don't believe, in Victorville.
No, but what there is in Victorville, interestingly enough, there is a rail.
There's a rail that goes right through
At the
by
Victorville
McDonald's,
Transportation Center, about 5 miles south of our
So I
station
stopped
site.
to go to the bathroom. yeah.
The Southwest Chief stops
Driving
there
that
once a
route.
day.
Yeah.
So there is actually potential for rail to bus transfer from that transportation center in Victorville. You know, Amtrak runs 1 train a day now, just like they did on the Desert Wind service when they used to serve Las Vegas.
Right.
And unless and until we actually are under construction, I don't think we'll get much traction on that conversation.
So as a private company, because I rode the Amtrak when they came to try to promote doing high-speed rail back in like late 90s, and took it into the Union Station. Actually, they did a presentation for anybody locally that wanted to ride it. And the problem is they were sticking them on the freight bed. So you can't get to the speed that you need in order to be able to
Right.
tell people it's okay to get out of your car. You weren't really saving anything on time. So you've been able to secure federal property alongside the freight line, basically?
No, actually, following the UP corridor was one alignment alternative
Okay.
that was considered in the EIS process. It was, a big portion of it was screened out early on because most of it goes through the Mojave National Preserve, which
Right.
was just ruled out. So the federal land that we currently have a lease agreement for is overlapping land with the existing I-15 right-of-way.
Okay,
So when you're driving down the I-15 and you look out to the side and you can see the fence line
right.
there, it's a really good indicate, I mean, that is where our rail line will be, is right on that
On
fence
that
line.
line. And
On the inside
on
of
the
that
inside.
fence line.
So when you say a lease, there will be financing, so we're not giving away public land?
No,
to a
we're
private
paying for
company.
the public
Okay.
land, yeah.
And when you say is the EIS restricting you to the 150 miles per hour in any of the areas? Or is, because you indicated you could go faster, and this is going to be technology that goes to 220, but are you restricted in the EIS?
We're restricted in a number of ways. The regulatory framework that currently exists in the United States is limited at 150 miles an hour. And that was really to facilitate the Northeast Corridor, which at times gets to 150 miles an hour. So our environmental document is based around going 150 miles an hour. There's a margin in the analysis for a little bit below or above that.
So our feds don't recognize the new technologies that are out there that are used around the world, in other words?
They do, but our proposal and our application was focused on 150 miles an hour because particularly at the time we started, there was no regulatory framework for anything above 150 miles an hour. We saw that as a real challenge. But as we looked into the actual operations, the ridership and the demand, and what we needed to actually attract ridership, 150 miles an hour is exactly what we need. I mean, it's a really sweet
Right,
spot.
but for now, it's
For
going
now.
to change again. And see, that's the thing. I'm a proponent of steel wheel. Maglev works fine, but that was not going to help us with any kind of interconnectivity in this whole
Right.
western region, so we had to think differently on that. I just wouldn't want anybody to be restricted to any new technologies that come into play down the road, or, El Cajon's not going to flatten out, but there may be other things that
Right.
come into play that allow them to go faster when's needed and so forth.
One of the advantages of this corridor is you have about 125 miles of just straight
Yeah.
tangent at grade track. And so, as the regulatory environment changes, if our business model changes that makes business sense to go faster than 150 miles an hour, we'll have the flexibility to look at that and look at where on our alignment it makes sense to go faster.
Okay.
So I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, I
mean,
think
we
that
do have
does.
some
I just would not
flexibility.
want you to restrict, or any business that's going to do this. Now, if you were to get this actually going, the main line is to Victorville, Vegas to Victorville, and Victorville to Palmdale, and that way you link up with the MetroLink. If down the road, and maybe Mr. Skanke will address that part, there's still opportunities for public connections to come in other parts. There's nothing that obligates us to only private sector being able to do anything along these lines.
In
I'm
terms
not being
of,
clear, not on this, I understand yours is a private sector one, but say we wanted, there's Amtrak right now that connects from Reno to San Francisco, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But say we wanted to eventually do something from Reno to Southern Nevada, and maybe we make a public obligation. We're not prohibited from doing that. You don't have any kind of exclusivity other than on this
other than on
corridor.
our alignment, right?
Correct, okay.
And our project is designed with standard gauge steel wheel,
I
rail
don't wanna get-
technology that's
good.
non-proprietary.
Okay.
So, it's designed to be interoperable to future systems.
Okay, that's very key, because with no disrespect, that was always one of my main issues with the monorail. It was not interconnected with anything, let alone, so we would not want to get there. So maybe we learned from that mistake. But I do tend to agree with Councilman Ross. If we're going to look at mobility and interconnectivity, you want a place where you hub. As one who rides trains and I just drove to San Diego last weekend, I would get out of my car, but I'm not going to hassle right now with getting out at Victorville if I'm going to the Playboy Jazz Fest with my coolers. So that's a different story. But that you have to look at the convenience for the folks. And I think what I read in Sunday's paper was that Mr. Marnell that they interviewed, that the issue was maybe it wouldn't be convenient for us initially, but for that Palmdale and the folks within that region, that would be a key place where you would then begin to make some of your ridership, then looking at expanding it as you come into the Vegas market.
That's right. I mean, the initial system, the majority of our ridership is Southern California residents or visitors from other parts around the world or the country coming through Southern California and then going on to Las Vegas. There is a small portion of Las Vegas residents that would take the train.
Okay.
But looking down the road, the connectivity to Palmdale with an initial connection to the existing MetroLink system will encourage more diversion of Las Vegas residents because it'll make it more easier. And then ultimately improving that system to be higher speed, electrified, so you can actually take one train all the way down into LA. I mean, that's the ultimate goal.
The $89 round trip right now would be from Victorville to?
Victorville to Las Vegas.
Okay. And then, do you know what your cost would be for Palmdale? Or, wait, do they have to get out of their car?
They don't get out, they
They don't get
don't
out of the
change to get to Palmdale.
Okay.
And we've not yet
Looked at that
gotten into
cost.
the financial analysis of
Okay.
that.
So, no, okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Hafen.
I just wondered when it's going to be available from Mesquite to Vegas so I can drive down to these meetings, so I have to fight the traffic. Now, from your presentation, I'm assuming that the group would like to capture 25% of the market. Is that from the presentation? Because you say you're going to eliminate 25% of the traffic coming from California north. That seems like a pretty substantial percentage of those that are traveling from California to Vegas. I mean, I appreciate the private money, but I hope that the timing on that, once it opens, what's the timetable that you feel like you can capture that 25%?
Well, our investment grade ridership study that's currently under review with the FRA through the RIF loan process includes all of that detail, and they're evaluating that. So I can't go into too much detail publicly about it, but I can tell you that in the plan, there is a ramp-up period that's built in for people to get used to the system, for us to market the system to where we ramp up to our ultimate ridership.
And so obviously with that every 20 minutes, that's going to play into that perform as well.
It will,
Okay.
yeah.
Capacity per train, I mean, what are you looking at?
It's approximately 500 people, 500 to 600 people per train set, depending on how it's configured. So that's roughly equivalent to a 747, or I guess a 747 in size.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And our last presenter today is Tom Skanke, who's going to talk with us about the Western High-Speed Rail Alliance and give us an update.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, through you, with Chris G., one of my questions was going to be the same, you sort of asked it in two separate ways, but that entire first page that talks about the $89, that talks about the time, that's only to Victorville.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Tom Skanke. For the record, I'm representing today the Western High-Speed Rail Alliance. And I don't know about you, but my ADD kicked in around 9:30. And so you've heard a lot today about transportation, and I think this has been some outstanding presentations to get you all and the public really informed of all the great projects that are happening here in and around the region in Southern Nevada. Most people just don't know all the work that's going on. They look around and they see, you know, a new lane go up, or they see a transit project happen, and they don't understand all the background that needs to go into this. And they don't realize that the Express West program and project has been in the works for 7+ years. They don't understand the work and the work that we have to do. And the reason why I'm going in that direction is because in 2009, we started the Western High-Speed Rail Alliance. And we started that because US DOT's map came out for high-speed rail corridors in the country, and the Intermountain and Desert Southwest was left off. Not purposely. What US DOT was using was a map that was approved by Congress 30 years ago for potentially high-speed rail corridors in the United States. But what that allowed us to do was bring Denver and Reno and Salt Lake City and Las Vegas and Phoenix together in a meeting and say, look, we've kind of been left off the map, and you can't build a national system without including the Intermountain and Desert Southwest. And thanks to the leadership of those 5 organizations, in 2009, the birth of the Western High-Speed Rail Alliance occurred. That was monumental for our region because it began to connect Denver to Phoenix and Las Vegas to Reno and Phoenix, and then got us into California. And as the momentum built with the Express West project, people began to see the vision and the potential of what you're all really talking about today. Whether it's a Union Station or it's a Las Vegas Station or whatever you end up calling it, I am not going to get into the naming business, but at the end of the day, what you're really talking about is regional connectivity. We have finally got a group of people throughout this region talking about how we connect ourselves. And the importance of that from an economic diversification and development and sustainability point of view. The rest of the country just cannot operate without the Intermountain and Desert Southwest. We are a third of the nation's GDP. We have 85% of the nation's growth right here in the state of Nevada. And if you look at what's happening throughout the region, it's about an 82% growth right out to 2040. And so that really sets the case for why high-speed rail in the Intermountain and Desert Southwest is so important. But more importantly, I think that states the case of why we need to talk about regional connectivity. How do we connect to Mesquite? How do we connect to Boulder City? Where does that station locate? And it's that kind of grander, bolder vision that we believe in our alliance's work of how we connect, keeping in mind that high-speed rail primarily, the most important aspect of that is the first and last 25 miles. It's really how you enter and exit a city. If you've ridden high-speed rail in Europe, some of the problems that France has had in particular is that they didn't plan for how they entered and exited Paris. They can't expand. And as their system continues to grow and the demand on the system continues to grow, they can't expand. They have a set number of lane miles and set number of rail lines that come into the city, and that's it. Washington, D.C., same situation. What's unique about us is that we don't have predetermined rail alignments. So as Express West continues to build their project throughout the Desert Southwest, we can help them determine where those rail lines go and allow them to set aside the necessary right-of-way, working with the I-15 Mobility Alliance, the I-11 Alliance, the Western High-Speed Rail Alliance, and all the agencies throughout this corridor, keeping in mind that in the last 3 years, can I tell you how many alliances have been started? I listed 3. There are hundreds in California. But what that really demonstrates is spirit of cooperation and the importance of mobility and transportation in our region. Every sound city and country around the world that has successful economic diversification and development has a strong foundation of transportation infrastructure. We're playing catch-up, but we're finally there. And one of the things that our alliance has been working on with Federal Rail Administration is a national grant program to study high-speed rail connectivity throughout the Intermountain West and Desert Southwest. It was a $1.3 million grant that we worked with them on, and they're finishing up the findings of their grant, and they'll be releasing those findings in the next probably couple of months, we hope. But there's so much going on around rail, around transit, around mobility, that it is a crucial time for us, but these are really exciting times. And in a matter of 3-year period of time, our alliance has developed great relationships by bringing people together to talk about one central issue. We are holding our symposium in October in Denver. We held it here for 2 years. We are going to Denver. We're going to really focus this year on other modes because you really have to be multimodal. So we're going to have a panel on transit. We're going to have a panel on updating our community in high-speed rail and the state rail plans and what Colorado is doing with their very aggressive program on high-speed rail throughout their state. And then we're going to talk about highways and other connectivity and actually how we do plan to get into and out of our communities. It's the quality of life issue for the passenger of how they get here. Andrew mentioned to you, which I think is a great concept that they've already looked at, which is when you get out of your car in Victorville and you come to Las Vegas, you check your bags, you check into your hotel, you get your key, you do all the stuff there, which when they get to Las Vegas, that reduces trip time and congestion when they get here. And working in conjunction with Tina and her staff and how we build that system out in Las Vegas and what that station and what that connectivity looks like, that can be done uniformly across the region. And so those are some of the things that we are looking at and some of the things that, for most of you know, I've worked on these issues for 25 years. I like to joke and say that when I started on this, I had hair. Some people don't believe me, but I really did. And barely, right, thank you, Commissioner. But really, these are exciting times in our transportation community here throughout our region. And I would like to thank you all for your membership in our alliance and for the vision, sharing in the vision and the leadership that you all provided to get us started. We are making great strides for connectivity throughout the Intermountain and Desert Southwest. I did have a 2-hour presentation. I cut that back. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of the previous topics or anything that I've mentioned here today.
Thank you. Commissioner June Giuliani.
Thank you. Good to see you, Tom. Where does the logistic ports come into place? Because I know that the Assembly had been looking at how you move goods and services as well. Is that part of some of this discussion with the Alliance? Because it's not just moving people. If we can move in the West like we do in the East, we would actually be benefiting all of our communities, job-wise and so forth. Is that any part of any discussion, do you know?
Commissioner, actually, you bring up a really good point. Our alliance is going to have a really interesting announcement in October as it relates to goods movement and how this region really takes a look at that. As most of you know, Nevada is a pass-through state when it comes to goods movement. Freight moves in really two modes, by truck and by rail.
Right.
And the railroads transport goods 500 miles or more, and trucks move goods 500 miles or less. We are a trucking destination, but the freight rail goods actually just pass through our state. And they go to Chicago, quite frankly. And one of the things we're going to look at is how do those goods movements affect the Intermountain and Desert Southwest? Phoenix is a 500-mile city. Las Vegas is a 500-mile city. Reno is a 500-mile city.
Portland.
And then it's 500 miles to Salt Lake, and then it's 500 miles to Denver from Salt Lake. So we have a great case model for high-speed rail connectivity, for passenger rail. It works really well. Passenger rail has been proven to work in connecting cities of 500 miles or less, and so all of these cities do that. We are going to be adding goods movement to our scope, and we're going to have a huge announcement, I think it's a huge announcement, in October at our conference on the new things that we're going to be looking at, and I'm very excited about that. But
Yeah,
goods
because I
movement will
think you can
definitely
open
be a
up the
piece of
doors.
that.
I mean, that's part of what we should be looking at, is the West just has never had the same type of movement from those of us that, from Chicago, from Boston, from other places, that were used to moving not just people, but goods and services were moved. And so I was hoping that that was part of that conversation.
We're heading in that direction, and just kind of a factoid is, 47% of our nation's goods come from the four western ports of Seattle, Oakland, LA, Long Beach, and 67% of those goods have to get east of the Mississippi River. And so we're a pass-through. We feel that congestion both on our rail lines as well as in our interstate highway system. And so, the goods are not going to stop. They're building bigger ships, faster ships that hold more. The line between Shanghai and Los Angeles, used to be a 13-day trip. It's now 7 with these new super cargo ships. They're building a new port in Punta Colonet in Mexico, which is why we worked on I-11 so hard to get that designation and working to try and expedite that process. Commissioner Brown pointed out that I said I'd like to try and see that done in 8 years. A lot of these things I like to see before I die. We started them a long time ago, and the clock's ticking. And the reality is, we have a chance now to actually get all these things done in an earlier period of time. But the goods aren't stopping. United States is an import nation, and those imports come from the Far East. I was in Shanghai and Beijing a year ago, and I've looked at all those ports, and I've looked at the demand and what they're creating. And it's not about if you build it, they will come. They're coming. And that affects our community and our mobility and our quality of life here in Southern Nevada. So that is going to be a part of our new scope.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Skanke.
Very good. Our next item then is item number 44, which is to conduct a comment period for citizens' participation.
Okay, I do have some cards, so let me go through the cards before I open it up. First off, Mr. Mendoza.
I was already falling asleep, Mr. Commissioner. Anyway, I'll make it brief this time, and we want to thank you for finally acknowledging our complaints to the commissioners regarding our intent to try to address some very important issues further down the road, and we'll do it as you mentioned in opening statements. But right now, I want to go ahead and provide some copies to the commissioners regarding our international legal counsel that's sent to the commissioners and Clark County commissioners and city council members, anybody that has to do regarding our complaint. That we've been here every month on spilling in the system and possible violation of 13C. So what I want to do, and before I start the reading of this letter, we are ready and we are willing to stop the buses from rolling if anything happens that we do not have a contract. As you can see, our members, some of them still stayed here, and some did leave, but we are here to stay and to be heard. So let me go ahead and start this reading of this letter from our international legal counsel addressed to you, Mr. Commissioner. And then after that, I'll be done. And thank you very much. Dear Mr. Brown, I write on behalf of Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1637, which represents the men and women who operate and maintain the buses of Las Vegas RTC fixed route operations. As the RTC selects the contract to operate the transit system as detailed in the request for proposals issued on July 10, 2012, it is imperative that the RTC ensures a smooth transition of operations and avoid incurring any liability in the form of displacement allowances by requiring a contractor to retain the current bus operators and maintenance employees and to maintain those employees' terms and conditions of employment subject to negotiations with Local 1637. The Las Vegas RTC has received millions and millions of federal dollars over several decades to develop its system and continues to receive federal assistance to develop and support the upcoming restructuring of the system and the selected contractor operations. As a condition of receiving federal funds, the RTC and its contractor, whether incumbent or successor contractor, are obligated to comply with terms and conditions of the September 21st, 1994 Section 13C arrangement as certified by the U.S. Department of Labor pursuant to Section 13C, now considered as 49 U.S.C. Section 5333, subparagraph B. The rights afforded to employees affected by federal funds under Section 13C must be protected and honored during the upcoming transition. Please accept, no citations, right? Okay, please accept this letter as a formal request to meet the RTC pursuant to paragraph 5 of the 1994 Section 13C arrangement, which requires the RTC to commence negotiations with the local union for the purpose of reaching agreement with respect to the application of the terms and conditions of the Section 13C arrangement to the intended changes slated to occur with the restructuring and splitting of the system. We are prepared to engage in such negotiations with the intent to resolve any issues involving the protection of the rights of employees represented by ATU Local 1637. In the event the parties are unable to reach an agreement and employees are dismissed or laid off, the RTC and its contractor will be liable for monetary allowances under applicable provisions of the 1994 Section 13C arrangement. We believe that it is the RTC's best interest to initiate negotiations sooner rather than later with Local 1637. Since 1994, these employees represented by ATU Local 1637 have acquired the necessary skills and knowledge to provide safe transit service in the general public's interest. It is incumbent upon the RTC to do the right thing here and protect the hardworking employees and prevent any 13C violations from occurring when the contractor commenced revenue service on July 7, 2013. It is our preference, of course, to reach a negotiated resolution rather than seeking the formal process of arbitration under paragraph 5 of the 1994 Section 13C arrangement. Your immediate attention is requested. We look forward to receiving a prompt response. Sincerely, Brother Robert Malowski, ATU Special Counsel. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. And although I see a lot of people were copied on this, I would ask staff to make sure both in-house legal and our outside counsel receive copies of this and be in touch with Mr. Malowski.
Could we also get a copy of whatever this reference is to the 1994C? Thank you.
Agreement. Sam,
Excuse me, what were you referring to? Because I think we should have a copy too, and I was wondering. if it
Yeah,
was-
it's the third paragraph, the reference to the 1994 Section 13C arrangement. I don't have a copy of that. and
Yep,
maybe
absolutely,
most of
we
us were new to the
will. We'll
board,
get you a
so
copy and we'll brief you as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Hunter.
Thank you.
Sam Santorja? That's an I. I apologize, Mr. Santoria. The I looked like a J. But I'm so blurry looking at the screen today, so.
Can't help but notice our members stayed here, but half of your group left.
And that, on that point, I do want to commend those that have sat here all morning and into the afternoon for the respectful behavior. Thank you.
Commend us and condemn those who left?
50%, take it.
All right, for now. You might remember me from the last month's meeting, but for the record, my name is Sam Santoria, American citizen, trying to exercise my First Amendment right. All that serves labor serves the nation. All that harms is treason. If a man tells you he loves America, yet he hates labor, he is a liar. There is no America without labor, and to fleece one is to rob the other. That's Abraham Lincoln. At last month's meeting, the phrase that pays was thinking outside the box. For those of us who might be out of a job next year, we're thinking I might be living in a box. President Mendoza has said repeatedly, the buses will not roll if a CBA is not in place to protect our jobs, wages, benefits, and seniority. Let me be the first to say nobody wins there's a strike. Every effort should be made to avoid a strike. Also, I would never want to strike. Having said that, please know this. I support my president 100%. When he says the buses will not roll, he is not bluffing. A strike is very serious, and it will not be done half-assed. I guarantee you the strip buses will not roll, as happened in the last strike. And when the strip doesn't move, all of you up there can explain to the businesses at the malls as to why tourists aren't coming by the busloads to spend money. You can explain to the merchants and casino owners why nobody's coming to their hotels and casinos. You can explain how you could have avoided a strike, but chose to treat us like second-class citizens instead. Not only are we first-class citizens, we are union members and registered voters. Unions made this country great, and the corporations, bankers, Wall Street, and politicians like yourselves have brought it to its knees. Please think about why you entered politics in the first place. If it was to line your pockets with cash, then I'm wasting my breath. But if you were some of the few who got into the game to make a difference in your community, city, state, or even the world, please listen. Traveling down the political road, you find out you need money to get reelected. Us little guys don't have money, only votes. So along comes big corporate money, special interests, and maybe even the devil himself. Then before you know it, you're voting for what you're told, not for what's in your heart. Remember, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There is still time to get back on your original paths. How's this for a plan? Just keep an open mind to my reasons, and it might make sense. Give Veolia a 5-year contract extension, not a new contract, of the extension they're working now. Give First Transit a 15-year exclusive paratransit contract. The RTC would then have to hire someone to do an extensive study as to the effects of splitting a bus system. As far as doing a study to the effects of splitting a bus system, the job should be given to the kids of G.B. Henderson, who were here last month. In 5 years, the majority of them will be entering college. This study will be their class project from now until then. The RTC should be able to find $1 million to give scholarships to these children for work on this study. It shouldn't be hard to find this money. It shouldn't be hard to find this money because you had no problem finding money for the ACE bus fiasco. These kids are our future, and I hope they hurry up and get here because the politicians running the country in the present aren't doing a very good job, and that includes all of you. The reason for the 5-year extension is this. In 5 years, I'll be 64 years old and could collect unemployment for 2 years until Social Security benefits kick in. Hopefully, the economy will have come back to where there are jobs to be found. In 5 years, some of you board members won't have to vote on the issue because you will have retired to your fat pensions, moved on to other political aspirations, have become paid consultants to transit corporations, or if there is justice, are behind bars. A 15-year contract for First Transit would be a juicy plum for being screwed over last year. I'm betting both Veolia and First Transit would agree to this right now. Also, Veolia must agree to have a CBA in place before the current contract expires or no deal. To ensure both sides negotiate in good faith, appoint a mediator. I suggest Deborah March. Look, at least I'm trying here. Have any of you given this matter any consideration, or is giving a raise to RTC SEIU members more important than actually providing transit service to the people who rely on public transportation? Here's the thing. You have to provide service to the public, so what's wrong with my plan? Think of it as thinking outside the box. Other than splitting the system, what's your plan? And splitting the system wasn't even your plan. It was First Transit's plan to settle their claim out of court. So I guess you admit it, you were wrong, but only behind closed doors. If all the parties involved agree to my plan, this is what will happen. 1,000 jobs will be saved for now. That's a win. 15-year government contract for First. That's a win. Veolia, 5-year contract. Win. The riding public, no disruption of service. That's a win. And your screw-up swept under the rug. That's a win. 5 wins on a parlay card is a good hit. There might not be a lot of us in attendance, but don't be fooled by our numbers. We work for a niggardly wage and cannot afford to miss a day, which is what transit companies rely on. But just as we are good enough to make the bus system run, we also know how to bring it to a screeching halt. I was born union, raised union, and will die union. My dad was union, my brothers are union, my uncles were union, my cousins are union, and now their kids are union. There are people who will break picket lines and try to bust my union. No non-union strikebreaker is smarter or more determined than me. I promise you the strip will not operate. If, God forbid, that day comes, remember this day. You now have at least one other option other than splitting the system. It's your choice. No CBA means no bus service, period. You decide.
Thank you.
My name is Sam Santoria, and I approve this message.
Thank you, Mr. Santoria. And we have Anthony Hodges.
Thank you, sir. To all the union members to know that I'm a retired union man. 45 years as an electrician for the IBEW. Labor is the backbone of all nations. And our great nation has some of the greatest things it has in front of it since we created unions. The 40-hour work week, and I can go on and on, forget about all that. But I'm trying to say union is a backbone. I mean, it's getting smaller and smaller, and so is the middle class, whatever. We're not into that. But these workers here is a backbone of the transportation system, and the drivers themselves. 4 people was killed today, and about 5 years ago I said that we need to move all those bus stops back, get the people back off the street, because if a car can have a mechanical failure and a wheel break and it go up on the sidewalk and kill 3 or 4. 4 people was killed today. But the last time they had a person got killed, it was over there by Samstown. A lady lost a leg and the other person was killed. And then before that, it was 4. It doesn't matter. The objective is we got the lousiest transportational bus stops and the system itself. Outside of the strip, the place where they need to be to take care of the people that, customers and whatever, that's a wonderful thing. But the residents in Clark County, the bus system is horrible. You got to go a half a block in the middle of the block to catch the bus, to come down to the corner, cross and go another 300 feet to get to the bus, and then they run off and leave people. This is frightening. Now, I mentioned this on the record that I said we need to move those bus stops on them. There's some streets where it's got just a wall in that bus. The people ain't got nowhere to run to. If they run down the street, the car gonna run over. If they stay under the wall, it's coming up against the wall. Furthermore, some of them bus stops is a death trap within it. The bench shouldn't even be there. There's some bus areas, it's better for the person to walk a half a mile and save their life than to sit in a death trap. I'm sorry, I know you wanted to hurry up, but Mr. Brown, your bus system, your transportation system is outside of the strip. It's a joke. The people that had service the strip, who need to get to work to take care of the people, you know what I'm saying? They can't get to work, and the bus system get worse and worse. You're cutting out some routes, and some people have to walk for a couple of miles just to get to a bus, and if they miss it, they're stuck for another hour and lose their jobs. I'm sorry, but you got a lousy system, Mr. Brown. And I know you got a few more years, but the main thing is If you don't do something quick, the bus system going to get worse. And these laborers and people, give them their contract because you got to keep the system running. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. A Randy Botsett.
Well, I guess we can skip the good morning part. Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'd like to take this time to introduce myself to all of you. I'm Business Agent Randy Botsett from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Local 631, Las Vegas, Nevada. And this is my colleague, Business Agent Joe Sampson. We represent over 5,000 members with variable contracts around the valley. Joe and I represent the members at First Paratransit and the First Rack at the airport, the Rent-A-Car Center. We're looking forward to working with RTC and First Transit Para and the Rack, not only in the present form, but also in the company's future endeavors. We'd like to take a proactive approach, but it takes all parties involved, such as setting up advisory committees with rank and file to take a proactive approach on addressing disputes and concerns, such as drivers being attacked by clients and making sure they have the proper training so they don't get terminated for taking the wrong action. This is only one of the issues the advisory committee is looking into. I think by taking a proactive approach with RTC, First Para, and the Teamsters Local 631, we can have a favorable understanding and a safer environment for the clients, RTC, First Para, and the Teamster members who dedicate themselves every day into making sure we maintain a professional atmosphere, without having to worry about over job loss and or injuries that occur to our members over such abuse. In the closing, we'll be here at the meetings, making sure all parties involved will be working towards the same goal, and that goal is beneficial to all parties involved. On behalf of the Teamsters Local 631 and all the dedicated members at First Para, we thank you for your time and look forward to working with you to resolve such issues.
Thank you.
I really don't have much to say, except I'd like to ask Mr. Santorum, was he on record a minute ago? Did he say niggardly wages?
We don't.
Okay.
Not the time.
I just asked, I wanted to
Thank
make
you.
sure I heard what I heard, okay? Yes, sir. All right. My name is Joe Sampson. I'm a Teamster business agent in conjunction with Randy. I know a few days ago, well, I think it was last week or the week before, there was an issue on national news about a young man that was trying to get on an airplane with his parents, and he had a handicap, disability, and they disallowed the boy from going on there. Now, this issue hasn't been resolved. However, every day, our drivers are subject to some of these same types of observations, and that was an observation why they didn't allow the boy on the plane. So, my point is this. First Transit has the mission. Our drivers, these drivers, they make it happen, okay? They have to do. You provide the leadership, okay? Our concern is that when these people out there, they don't have the proper guidance, even the people that have the mission, I don't think sometimes they understand, what these drivers have to go through when they're dealing with people that they don't have the qualifications to deal with. So we're asking you to mandate something for these people so that they can get training, so Randy and I don't have to go to these hearings, watch our people when they get beat up or if they try to defend themselves, they get terminated. I don't know if you're aware of it, but this is a true story. I'm not lying to you. So, you're the leader. They have the mission. We'll do whatever we need to do, but we're tired of trying to represent something that we can't. So can you help us out? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. Mr. Betzell. Okay. I'm out of cards. Does anyone else wish to speak to the board?
Well, good morning. I'm going to make it brief. I know we had a nice long day today. So I am representing the drivers. Every driver you have, I'm supporting them all. To keep your drivers, you have to respect them. Respect is not there. I ride these buses each and every day. And what goes on, I could write a book. The splitting of the yards is not a good idea because the yards are too small. And these drivers need their jobs. And also, what we need to do is on the 203 bus at Low Mountain, I go there, we need a stop sign, you need something there because I have to go, unfortunate, to see a person there, she's in prison, unfortunate, and there's a women in prison there. There's no light there, and there's a little divider. And I feel that you need, not a long light, I don't need a long one because it's a short street, but I think we need a light there so when the bus makes that turn, you can cross over and you can go down, you can go down the street. Okay, that's my suggestion. I'm not going to make, I'm trying to make it short, but as I say again, each driver here needs their job.
And before you leave, we know who you are, but would you put your name on the record?
Well, my name is Patricia Anderson.
Thanks, Patricia.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Carolyn Higgins. I am one of the drivers out here for public transportation. And I wanted to thank you, Chairman, and as well as Ms. Quigley for placing us on the agenda, or moving us into that direction so that in the future we can be heard in the beginning, possibly then the end. But I just wanted to let you know that, we have no breaks, no bathroom breaks, and I've talked about this before. And you want us treated as, we're pretty much treated almost like animals. So why do you think it's okay to treat a bus driver that way? Okay? Shame on the RTC.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Barbara Powell, elected Vice President of Local 1637 ATU here in Las Vegas. First of all, I would like to change things around just a little bit. I would like to say thank you to you, Tina, and also to you, MJ, for upholding your word. You did, in my absence, come and take a ride on my route. I understand that you were able to see some of the problems that we go through. I also understand that you sent another couple of people out that did get a chance to ride with me. And one of the ladies did ask me if this was would be my lunch break if I were on time, to which I laughed hysterically and told her, no, we don't get those. Those are not scheduled. But again, thank you for answering the challenge. And okay, I wish you had been there with me on Wednesday. I broke down.
I will be with you again, but the Desert Rose was my district, and I
Okay.
was out at the homes with the people that were flood victims. So I made
Okay,
that decision.
good.
I'm rescheduling.
I just wanted to let you know that I was stranded. One of the buses that was broken down on Tropicana. I believe that there were 3 of us, and I was there from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until almost 9 p.m. while I sat and watched my coworkers come in and fill in and, keep the system running while I was trying to keep from floating away. I was at the corner of Andover and Tropicana. So I just still want you to answer to my challenge. I have another one I'd like to throw in too. I would like to know, since it was brought up, that all parties in transportation get a chance to sit down and talk. How about sitting down and talking with us, having some of our input? Since we run the system, we know what it needs. You don't have to pay us thousands of dollars to analyze and to get some real truthful answers as to what needs to be done. We can tell you. You know, the only thing that we ask for is an audience with you, the commissioners, with you, RTC, and with anyone else who'd like to meet with us. Thank you very much, and you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. By show of hands, how many additional speakers do we anticipate? Please, thank you.
Hi, my name's John. I just had a real quick one. We had another tragedy this morning at a bus stop. And one of the more common things is everybody knows we need to move the stops back. That's great. It's another problem is customers come up and they stand on the very edge of the curb as the bus pulls in. Part of the bus overhangs the curb as we pull in, which is necessary to get our tires close enough to the curb. This is some CDL type stuff y'all might not know about. But the front end overhangs the curb as we pull in. And the mirror hangs out there, and that's very common for people to get knocked in the head because they stand on the curb. If you could get some paint out there and paint off a little zone in front of that curb and says, please stand behind this line when the bus is approaching, you'd save a whole lot of injuries and a lot of bus drivers' jobs. Also, as the bus exits, a very common thing is called a tail whip. From the rear tire to the edge of the bumper is another area that overhangs as the driver pulls out, particularly if for some reason he has to pull out sharply. That entire area of about 4 feet from the rear of the tire to the end of the bumper can overhang on that curb again, often damaging the structure, and if somebody, say, is just hanging out in the structure, not taking the bus but taking a nap, it can actually kill them. So moving the structures back is great, but also a little painted area saying, please stand back about 3 feet from the curb. Please stand back this area while the bus is approaching. A little sign painted on the curb, and then a little like red zone, yellow zone, whatever, would help a lot. Thank you.
Thank you,
My name's John Post.
Good afternoon. John Mosley, Executive Board, ATU 1637. Thought that maybe there might be a little tasty tidbit here for you guys to kind of roll over your tongues. Custodian working for the RTC makes more than a bus driver will make in 10 years. Maybe sounds like, okay, and what? Well, how many lives is a custodian charged with safeguarding in the course of a workday? For a bus driver, it's hundreds. To me, that's really disgusting, and to that I say, shame on the RTC.
Well, I'm not much for public speaking. I get kind of nervous up in front of microphones. To introduce myself, my name is Todd Connor. I'm a native of Las Vegas and did ride the bus one time back in '91 when I was a kid, though, and I'm not only a bus driver, I am also a bus commuter as well. Now, this whole yard split, has kind of got everybody up in a turmoil, though. Just kind of wanted to introduce myself just a little bit more, though, before I even actually mention anything about that. I'm a high school dropout, and I'm also a college dropout. And last time my GPA was recorded, it was at 3.67, and I read at 11th grade level. Now, this yard split, I do not believe is the answer, though, because if you look at this from a financial point, though, it's just like, it kind of makes me think about, how when a business is doing well, its stock will split. And everybody, from the reports that I've seen, though, and from what I've heard, the revenue is down, too, though, so it's just not the answer. I just wanted to say that, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Connor.
Good morning, members. My name is Victor Jones. There's a few things to say to you guys. As we sit here this morning listening to all the above, And the main thing we all listen to, the Veolia the system is working, okay? We the drivers are doing an excellent job out there, okay? What it is to you guys, especially the commissioners, to sit down with the union and just listen to us, okay? We transport thousands of people every month, okay? We do a great job out there. Now, this past Tuesday, during this flood, I was stuck on Flamingo, right in front of Desert Spring Hospital for over 2 hours, okay? I could not go to the restroom, no restroom around there, okay? We work hard every day and night transporting these citizens of Nevada from work, home. We do a great job, okay? Once again, my grandfather told me years ago, you must not create a problem, you resolve a problem. And this problem that we're facing right now, just attire, T-shirt, picket signs, is unnecessary. All this could be avoided. Sit down with the union leaders and work out this contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Hello, my name is Melissa, paratransit driver for about 5 years. And I'd just like to say that paratransit seems to be the forgotten entity with RTC, but we have a lot of issues at paratransit, such as racial discrimination, workplace discrimination, and safety issues. And one of the safety issues is 2121 Industrial Road. It's an agency, and it's very dangerous to exit. And you just purchase more vehicles. They seem to be longer vehicles, and it's just unsafe. And as far as the buses, you're wasting our taxpayers' money by putting all of this junk on the buses, unnecessary stuff on the buses. And it would be nice if some of you people would come to paratransit to visit us and talk to the drivers so that we can tell you what some of the problems that we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Afternoon, sir. My name is Dennis Crawford. Basically, I'm here because I'm a little confused over your paratransit service system. Received a letter in April saying that my son would no longer be picked up at his home and transported to work and back because you had canceled some of the fixed bus routes, which I understand. But then again, in May, I received a letter from RTC stating that there was a study done in 2011 that stated there's 480 riders that have been grandfathered in that live outside this area. I have no idea what the criteria was for these 480 riders. And they're good till July of 2015. I just received another pamphlet here 3 days ago stating that the alignment of the paratransit system with areas serviced by RTC regular transit service within the guidelines of the ADA, RTC will no longer provide clients who live beyond the RTC service. Additional RTC hours of operations will go in alignment with the regular service, which will cut some of the night service. This effective change is 2015. My question is, what are we doing here? You're saying in one letter, as of May, if you live outside the 3/4 mile from a fixed route, you're no longer going to be serviced. But then you turn around and say that you did a study the year before that says 480 people that live outside this area will get service till 2015. Then you turn around and put out another pamphlet that says you're going to make these changes effective 2015 July. What are we doing?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crawford, but if you would, I know you've waited all day, but if you could wait afterwards, we'll have
Be more than
someone-
happy to, sir.
We'll have someone speak to you directly. Thank you. I need to ask it, does anybody else wish to speak to the RTC board?
Thank you for your time. My name is Dora Milner.
Or you can pull that down, you can pull that mic down.
I'm going to start with a definition, and then I'm going to give you a story. Monopoly, exclusive ownership as through command of supply, commodity controlled by one party. That is monopoly. Having already faced one monopoly, Nevada Energy, this year, I have had to finally make drastic changes to my life. In April of 2012, living in a modest 3-bedroom, 2-bath, no washer, no dryer, and barely a dishwasher, my power bill exceeded $375. Very unacceptable. In March of 2012, my son had an emergency surgery, and I should have never had to think of a misplaced bill. I had to give them $700 in March. My power had been shut off, and I was still paying for the previous year. Life just happens. For several years, I had been dealing with life just happening, far too much to mention. But ultimately, my income had to support a family of 5. Knowing summer was not here yet, I had to make a very agonizing decision. I had to move. Having taken the first vacation of 5 days to move for the first time in 10 years, I can't say it was very much fun. No pictures, no pool resorts or fancy dinners, just hot, frustrated moving, broken and bruised work in the heat of July. Life just happens. I now have a bedroom the size of a 6-foot by 12 cell, and it's a cozy add-on, but that's what my life is. So I ask of you, what more do I have to lose? How much longer do I have to say to my son, next paycheck? You offer no guarantee of a job or benefits or medical. I have worked so hard to get where I am and can't keep losing to monopolies, nor can the hundreds of people you will affect. I have made drastic changes, and now I face another one. As with monopolies, you control the board and you control all the pieces. By splitting the yard, there are no protections for me, the drivers, the maintenance, or administration. Yes, there is a law in place that whoever comes in cannot make it worse, but then again, there are ways around that. What are you going to do for the hundreds of workers you are going to affect? How many hoops will we have to jump through just to maintain what we have already worked so hard for? Some of us 6 months, some of us 20 years. So while life just happens to most of us, we still come to work and still provide the service you ask for, yet you sit back and make all the decisions with no regard to us. As my life happens, I ask, how are you going to protect me? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board?
Mr.
Again,
Chairman.
thank you all for hanging with us today and appreciate the respect you showed to yourselves and to the board. This meeting is adjourned.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment? Okay, that was a fast gavel. He did not want me to make it. I got to tell you, Chris,